Chapter 2249. Inside the Abandoned Secret Realm. Chu Mu fought 1 against 3 without using the Snow Dao Sword Jade. Wave after wave of incomparably powerful energy surged out of Chu Mu's body. It was like an unending tide. This was the energy that came from the true secrets of human Dao, the energy that erupted from triggering one's potential. With his cultivation in the Emperor Realm, the energy that came from executing the human Dao's true essence was still tyrannical. This was also a super powerful secret technique that was suitable for any cultivation realm. Its power was closely related to one's potential. Potential could be innate, or it could be nurtured slowly. Innate potential was closely related to one's talent. Postnatal potential needed to be accumulated through treasures and various experiences. Chu Mu himself had astonishing innate talent. In postnatal, he had worked extremely hard and experienced countless trials and tribulations. He had accumulated time and time again, causing his innate potential to combine postnatal and postnatal potential to become more and more profound. From the first sword to the 9th sword, Chu Mu displayed the full power of every sword move. With the help of the human Dao's true essence and the grand true wheel's power, every sword move was tyrannical. The sword light was like a stormy sea, and it was like lightning shattering the void. The grand true wheel merged the strengths of the divine soul, devil soul, and heart. With Chu Mu's foundation as the core, it was a unique existence that was ranked above the divine soul, devil soul, and heart. The power derived from it was even more tyrannical. With the help of the Dao-seeking sword art, Huang Xiaolong's essence, Qi and soul were further enhanced. Revolving reincarnation, destroying heaven and earth. The 2 low-level second-step Emperor Realm experts retreated again and again under Chu Mu's sword. Then the high-level second-step Emperor Realm experts' long spear swept out, bringing with it waves of energy. The energy waves condensed into one and pierced through the air, piercing towards Huang Xiaolong. There seemed to be the roars of dragons and tigers. It was too late for Chu Mu to dodge. He could only take it head-on. The body of the Li perishing sword was struck by the tip of the spear. It bent inwards and struck Chu Mu's chest with great force. With a bang, a terrifying power surged through the body of the sword. It was as if it wanted to shatter Chu Mu's body. Under the rotation of the great true wheel, Chu Mu's body became even more tyrannical. He forcibly withstood this tyrannical spear strike, causing his blood and qi to churn endlessly. Forcefully enduring the intense pain in his chest and a mouthful of blood, Chu Mu took the opportunity to retreat. Using the 3rd level of the world's end near-at-hand technique, he was able to escape the attack of the long spear in just a breath's time. The 3rd level of the world's end near ruler body involved the profoundness of time. Only after reaching the Emperor Realm could Chu Mu truly execute it. To experts, a single breath of time was sufficient for them to make many changes. Even though Huang Xiaolong was an Emperor Realm expert, executing the 3rd level of the world's end near-at-hand technique consumed a large amount of energy every time. After all, it involved the profoundness of time. What did it mean to increase the time difference between him and his enemy to a breath's time? A breath's time difference meant that he would be able to react faster than his enemy by a breath's time. Most of the time, a single breath's time was enough to determine victory and defeat, life and death. Chu Mu, who had retreated in an instant, flew away. He was very clear that his strength was enough to fight against a low-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert. Under the circumstances of using the true mystery of human Dao, he could defeat an average low-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert. However, he estimated that he couldn't contend against a mid-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert, not to mention a high-level second-step Emperor Realm expert. However, with the various methods he had mastered, it was impossible for a high-level second-step Emperor Realm expert to kill him, unless he used the sword Dao Snow Jade. Otherwise, Chu wouldn't be able to fight against 3 second-step Emperor Realm experts at the same time. It was already amazing that he could fight against them, executing the 3rd level of the world's end near-at-hand technique. Chu escaped by a breath's time. Then, executing the 2nd level of the world's end near-at-hand technique, he instantly crossed the distance of 100,000 meters. With his cultivation in the Emperor Realm, executing the 2nd level of the world's end near-at-hand technique wouldn't consume a lot of energy. It was very suitable for escaping. In the blink of an eye, Chu was already far away. After leaving behind his back view, he disappeared again. The 3 second-step Emperor Realm experts were naturally unwilling to give up. They immediately gave chase, but the 2 low-level second-step Emperor Realm experts couldn't catch up to Chu. Even though the high-level second-step Emperor Realm expert was fast, he didn't dare to chase after Chu alone. After all, he still remembered that Chu had the strength of a 3rd-step Emperor Realm expert as his trump card. The 3 second-step Emperor Realm experts stopped chasing and looked at Chu back view. Their faces were incomparably gloomy. They had never imagined that a mere half-step Emperor Realm ant would be able to threaten them time and time again. Now he had even successfully broken through to the Emperor Realm, even though he was only a low-level 1st-step Emperor Realm expert. His strength was comparable to a low-level 2nd-step Emperor Realm expert. This meant that this person's potential was limitless. If he wanted to take revenge in the future, it would definitely be a disaster for them. Go, leave this place. The origin world is so big. There are countless worlds and worlds. As long as we leave this place, he won't be able to find us. The 3 second-step Emperor Realm experts immediately made a decision. As long as they didn't encounter this person in the future, they would be fine. When they made this decision, their hearts were filled with humiliation. However, there was no other way. The world of the strong was just that cruel. After the true mystery of human Tao ended, Chu felt a sense of emptiness in his body. However, as the great true wheel rotated in the depths of his body, the feeling of emptiness gradually weakened. After half an hour, it completely disappeared. Chu could also feel that as the great true wheel rotated, the depleted potential in his body was recovering bit by bit. He silently estimated that at this rate of recovery, he would need around 10 days to be able to use the true mystery of human Tao again. In the past, it would take at least a month. It seemed like the great true wheel still had secrets that he hadn't discovered. 30 days had become 10 days. This was undoubtedly a very significant improvement. Chu was very happy. The speed of an Emperor Realm expert was many times faster than a half-step Emperor Realm expert. Chu quickly left the secret territory and returned to the ancient Sword City through the space-time gate. He arrived at the Prodigy's Barracks. The Prodigy's Barracks was a place to nurture prodigies and exceptional prodigies. However, it was only limited to exceptional prodigies. Now that Chu cultivation had reached the Emperor Realm, he could no longer stay in the Prodigy's Barracks. His purpose in coming to the Prodigy's Barracks was naturally to apply to leave. Chu's application immediately caused a huge commotion. The Emperor Realm was a new starting point. After applying to leave the Prodigy's Barracks, the unique restaurant naturally no longer belonged to Chu. However, as an exceptional prodigy who left the Prodigy's Barracks, Chu also received a reward. He was given a palace in the ancient Sword City. The closer one was to the center of the ancient Sword City, the better the cultivation environment. As an exceptional prodigy who left the Prodigy's Barracks, the location of the palace that Chu received was naturally extremely good. It was very close to the center of the ancient Sword City. It could be said that it was second only to the palaces of sovereign realm experts. The name of the palace was directly named the Unparalleled Palace. From now on, Chu was the palace master of the Unparalleled Palace. Next, Chu was naturally summoned. The people who summoned him were naturally the city lord of the ancient Sword City and the various demigod sovereigns. They were extremely curious about Chu because not only was Chu the most exceptional prodigy in history, but he had also cultivated the mysterious Three Saints technique that the first ancient sword sovereign had brought back from the depths of the chaotic universe. Therefore, they wanted to know what Chu would be like after breaking through to the Emperor realm under such conditions. Chu stood in the city lord's palace and was looked at by the demigod sovereigns. He felt as though he was being seen through. "Little friend, what is condensing in the depths of your body?" one of the demigod sovereigns asked. Their cultivation bases were incomparably high, countless times higher than Chu. Therefore, they could almost see through Chu. What Chu condensed in his body naturally couldn't escape their eyes. "I named it the Grand True Wheel." Chu replied, "Grand True Wheel? Little friend, can you tell us about the profoundness of the Grand True Wheel?" one of the demigod sovereigns probed. "Sure," Chu said. "The divine race has the divine soul, the devil race has the devil soul, and the Yuan race has the Yuan race's Yuan heart. This is one of their strongest trump cards. The cultivation technique I created used the Three Saints technique as a primer and merged with the characteristics of the divine race, devil race, and Yuan race. In a certain sense, the Grand True Wheel is similar to the divine soul, devil soul, and Yuan race's Yuan heart." The Grand True Wheel was the core of Chu cultivation. He wouldn't explain it in detail, even if the other party was one of the higher-ups of the human race. The demigod sovereigns also understood this point. They didn't want to understand it in detail. After knowing that the Grand True Wheel was similar to the divine soul, devil soul, and Yuan race's Yuan heart, the demigod sovereigns were greatly shocked. They were very clear that one of the reasons why the divine race and devil race were so strong was because they had the divine soul and devil soul. The divine race and devil race in the Emperor realm possessed the divine soul and devil soul. When they reached the sovereign realm, they would transform into the origin. In other words, the divine race and devil race could possess two kinds of origin. In other words, the Grand True Wheel that Chu condensed was similar to the divine soul and devil soul in a certain sense. It meant that when he reached the sovereign realm in the future, he could possess two kinds of origin. The origin was very powerful. If a person possessed two kinds of origin, their strength would be unimaginable. Possessing two kinds of origin was something that the majority of the demigod sovereigns couldn't achieve. They couldn't help but feel envious. From the point of the Grand True Wheel, the demigod sovereigns were more optimistic about Chu future. They felt that if Chu became a great emperor, he would definitely be a very powerful figure amongst great emperors. If he became a dominator, he would definitely be an extremely powerful figure amongst dominators. If he became a half-god sovereign, he would definitely be a very powerful figure amongst half-god sovereigns. However, there was one thing that made them feel that it was a pity. The Grand True Wheel that Chu condensed was a self-created cultivation technique. Using the Three Saints art as a catalyst, he fused the unique characteristics of the three races. This was equivalent to adding a restriction. It was almost impossible to replicate. However, this was an opportunity that belonged to Chu. They wouldn't force Chu to make it public. Chapter 2250. Chu had won 6th place in the Great Alliance tournament. In addition to being rewarded with tens of thousands of clan merit points, he was also given the opportunity to enter the first stage of the primal universe to comprehend for 5 years. Chu had used up 1 year, so he still had 4 years left. After applying, Chu entered the first stage of the primal universe again. The feeling of entering when he was a half-step great emperor was completely different from when he was a great emperor. If it was a little blurry in the past, then now it was as if a layer of dust had been wiped off. It became clearer and clearer. The traces of the origin kept flashing in front of his eyes, and each of them was filled with a unique charm. The heat of the fire was unique as it swayed. The gentleness of the water was violent as it washed over him. After entering the first stage of the primal universe, Chumu quickly entered a state of comprehension under the attraction of the embryonic form of the chaos origin. All distracting thoughts naturally disappeared. The traces of the embryonic form of the universe origin were reflected in his pupils. They flashed past like little fairies, and they were full of profoundness and mystery. Countless mysteries kept appearing in Chumu's mind. Chumu's cultivation had just broken through to the first stage of the great emperor realm not long ago, so it had not been completely consolidated. It was in a floating state. In this state, it was easy for his cultivation to fall, but there was also an advantage, which was that it was easier for him to comprehend. This was a very important stage. The sword principle origin in the center of Chumu's spiritual world was changing little by little as he comprehended. It was slowly evolving toward a more profound level. The sword principle origin, when he was a half-step great emperor, was a relatively pure sword principle origin. Now, it was evolving into the all heavens sword principle origin bit by bit. To a certain extent, the origin of the sword way of the heavens was similar to the origin of the universe. The only difference was that the origin of the sword way of the heavens was mainly based on the way of the sword, but it also incorporated the mysteries of the other origins. This was a very important transformation. The perfection of the all heavens sword principle meant the perfection of the all heavens sword principle origin. The two were interconnected. However, perfecting a brand new sword Tao was extremely difficult to begin with. Not to mention that Chumu had placed his own sword Tao on such a high pedestal. Once perfected, it would definitely be considered the number one sword Tao in the entire Chaosverse. Time flew by. Chumu seemed to have turned into a statue. His entire body seemed to be devoid of vitality, yet it was filled with countless mysterious fluctuations of auras. Those were the fluctuations of auras that belonged to various origins. Some are blazing like fire, some are violent like thunder, some are cold like ice, some are swift like wind, some are vast like light, some are gloomy like darkness. But no matter what kind of aura it was always surrounded by an incomparably sharp aura, as if the stars were surrounding the moon. That sharp aura was extremely pure, piercing through the sky and tearing apart the world. As time passed, as Chumu comprehended, the auras of the origins that surrounded him merged into the sharpness in the center bit by bit. This represented the integration of the mysteries of the origins into the sword principle origin, accelerating the transformation of the sword principle origin into the all heavens sword principle origin. The sharpness of metal, the vitality of wood, the flexibility of water, the fierceness of fire, the heaviness of earth, the swiftness of wind, the coldness of ice, the violence of thunder, the vastness of light, the gloominess of darkness, the flexibility of space, the vicissitudes of time, all of a sudden, Chumu regained his senses. He knew that his comprehension this time had reached the peak. In other words, his cultivation had completely stabilized at the initial stage of the first step emperor realm, and he could break through to the middle stage of the first step emperor realm. After silently calculating the time, Chumu was surprised that he had actually comprehended for 2 years in this primal universe. There were still 2 years left. However, he did not intend to keep these 2 years. He would continue to use them. He stretched out his right hand and grasped the void. The Li Perishing Sword was in his hand, and he began to practice his sword technique. The basic sword technique was the foundation, and it was the most important thing. If the basic sword technique was not cultivated to a certain level, it would be difficult to practice more advanced sword techniques. It was like building a better building with a good foundation. He performed the basic sword technique over and over again, and he did not feel tired at all. As the Li Perishing Sword danced, streams of mysterious auras gathered from all directions again and entwined around the Li Perishing Sword. They also entwined around Chumu's body, imperceptibly influencing Chumu's sword principle origin, accelerating its transformation. Chumu's cultivation also improved imperceptibly. Chu Mu did not feel any of this because he was completely immersed in the cultivation of the basic sword technique. His entire being had entered a state of emptiness. Between doing and not doing, he unconsciously corresponded with the fluctuations of the primal universe. An invisible storm quietly descended, bringing with it countless streams of origin auras that surged toward Chu Mu. Chu Mu's body trembled as he accommodated countless streams of origin auras. They quickly washed through his body, and his cultivation improved at an astonishing speed. Once he started practicing the basic sword technique, it took him a year. Chu Mu naturally woke up. However, there was no limit to cultivation. When the time was right, he would naturally wake up. After a year of practicing the basic sword technique, Chu Mu's sword technique realm had improved further, reaching the peak of the first step heaven realm. If he went further, he would reach the mid-step heaven realm. The basic sword technique was even more profound, and he benefited from the various sword techniques that he had learned. With the completion of the All Heavens sword principle and the improvement of the All Heavens sword style, the power of each stroke from Sword 1 to Sword 9 was even more tyrannical. The essence of Sword 10 also appeared in Chu Mu's mind, and it was quickly perfected. There's still a year left, Chu Mu thought to himself. He felt that there seemed to be something that he had not done yet. As he pondered, he subconsciously glanced at the sword in his hand, and inspiration welled up. Although the Li perishing sword has been nourished by my sword principle origin many times and has surpassed a spiritual sword in essence, it is still not at the great emperor level. Now that my cultivation has reached the great emperor level, the Li perishing sword is no longer able to unleash 100% of my strength, Chu Mu thought to himself. There was no doubt that he could either change to a great emperor level sword or upgrade the Li perishing sword so that it would undergo a qualitative change and become a great emperor level sword. There were two possibilities. The first one was that Chu Mu did not have a great emperor level sword at the moment. Of course, if he wanted, he could easily get one. However, in the end, the second situation was better. A great emperor level sword that had been transformed through his own hands would undoubtedly be more compatible with him. I will choose the second option, Chu Mu thought to himself. His eyes flickered. However, it is not as simple as a transformation. I want to reforge the Li perishing sword. In the past, the Li perishing sword was indeed very suitable for Chu Mu. However, now that Chu Mu had created the All Heavens sword principle and created the All Heavens sword moves under it, it would undoubtedly be best to have a sword that was suitable for the All Heavens sword principle. It should be known that those perfect sword principles all had matching swords in order to unleash the full power of the sword principle. The All Heavens sword principle was created by Chu Mu himself, and there was no other branch. Moreover, it was not perfect enough. Therefore, there was no sword that was suitable for the All Heavens sword principle. Chu Mu could only forge it himself. The material of the Li perishing sword was very unusual. Moreover, it had been nourished by Chu Mu's sword principle origin for a long time and had already undergone some changes. Compared to the materials used to forge other great emperor-level swords, its material was not inferior at all. In fact, it was even better to some extent. This time, I will use the environment of the original universe to reforge the Li perishing sword, Chu Mu said to himself. After saying that, Chu Mu took out a lot of metals from his space ring. These metals were his spoils of war in the past, and they were of extremely high quality. They were just right to be used to reforge the Li perishing sword. As Chu Mu's hands moved, the aura of the fire origin of the original universe permeated the air in an instant. It combined with his own power and transformed into a ball of blazing flame. This kind of flame evolved from the aura of the fire origin had a terrifyingly high temperature. It quickly melted all kinds of metals into a pool of liquid. The impurities in the metal also quickly disappeared under the influence of the flame of the fire origin, leaving behind only the purest parts. The Li perishing sword was also calcined by Chu Mu in the flame of the fire origin. After being nourished by Chu Mu's sword principle origin, the Li perishing sword was even more difficult to melt. However, after a period of time, the Li perishing sword turned completely red and softened little by little. Then, it slowly turned into a viscous liquid. The pure liquid of the Li perishing sword, after being fused with a liquid of various extremely high-quality metals, fused together. Under Chu Mu's means, this fusion was not a simple fusion. Instead, it was a fusion of the deepest level. After the fusion, it would become a brand new material. Soon, a large ball of liquid that seemed to be black and gold appeared in front of Chu Mu. It slowly rotated. This was the material after the fusion. However, this was only the first step in reforging the sword. The sword that Chu Mu wanted to reforge was the sword that was most suitable for the sword principle of the All Heavens. Naturally, it would not be so simple. The various attributes of the Li perishing sword had been preserved by Chu Mu. In addition, Chu Mu formed a seal with his hands. Under his seal, the aura of the origin gathered from all directions and surged into the liquid in front of him, causing the liquid to undergo the second step of transformation. The All Heavens sword principle was a unique sword principle that focused on the way of the sword and fused with various great ways. It was unique. The sword of the All Heavens sword principle undoubtedly had to be fused with various mysteries in order to be compatible. Now, the sword had to be forged to the extent that Chu Mu's All Heavens sword principle had been perfected. Forging a sword was not a simple process. It took a lot of effort and effort. However, in order to better unleash his strength and completely display the mysteries of the All Heavens sword principle that he had created, Chu Mu had no choice but to do so. In the first stage of the primal universe, the origin of the universe was still in its embryonic form. It was extremely clear and filled with endless mysteries. Forging a sword in such an environment was undoubtedly more suitable than outside. In particular, Chu Mu wanted to forge a sword that was suitable for the All Heavens sword principle. He had to fuse various mysteries of the origin and leave behind a preliminary imprint. The primal universe was extremely convenient. Chapter 2251. I finally caught a cold. My nose is stuffed and my mouth is dry. I feel uncomfortable all over. I'm so weak. It's hard to imagine that a man like me can catch a cold. Fellow brothers, please be careful. The seasons change, and the temperature is unpredictable. No matter how high your cultivation is, you must be careful. The origin of the universe contained endless mysteries of the origin, and all the mysteries of the origin that existed within the universe could not escape. Chu Mu comprehended the embryonic form of the origin of the universe, perfected his All Heavens sword Tao, and forged All Heaven swords. Various mysteries were constantly integrated by Chu Mu into the mass of liquid, causing the aura emitted by the mass of liquid to become increasingly mysterious. However, Chu Mu felt that the mass of liquid in front of him seemed to become heavier and heavier. Gradually, there was a tendency that it was going to be beyond his control. How could this be? Chu Mu's heart skipped a beat, and he could not help but ponder. If he could not find the reason, he had a feeling that the forging of All Heavens swords this time would fail. Once it failed, the consequences would naturally be the waste of various materials. Chu Mu did not care about the waste of other materials, but the Li perishing sword had been with him for a long time, and he was very satisfied with it. Moreover, he had done his best to nurture it. It would be a pity. Is it carrying too much? A thought popped up in Chu Mu's mind, and he followed this point and connected the dots. If he wanted to forge a sword that was suitable for the All Heavens sword Tao, he would have to be like the All Heavens sword Tao, with the sword as the foundation, and then integrate various mysteries into it to finally take shape. However, he had neglected one point. The All Heavens sword Tao was not perfect yet. It could even be said that the All Heavens sword Tao was only recently established, and there was still a long way to go before it was truly perfected. It was very difficult to forge a sword that was completely compatible with an imperfect sword Tao. It was almost impossible because the future was full of variables. Chu Mu had to think about countermeasures. If there was a problem, then he had to find a solution. Within the primal universe, Chumu's mind was extremely clear. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind. One by one, images flashed past his mind. His eyes became unconscious as he stared ahead. The center of the original universe was where the universe origin was located. Around the universe origin, countless auras of different colors and shapes were entwined. Every aura of the universe origin was flowing toward the center, bypassing the center of the universe origin. Many strands of origin energy flowed past. This scene reminded Chumu of a scene he had seen before, where a large school of fish rushed out of the sea, drew a perfect trajectory, and then fell back down. There was no reason for it. It just suddenly jumped out from the depths of his mind. Chumu realized that his thoughts seemed to be a little out of his control. Scenes popped out from the depths of his mind. Some of them were scenes that he had seen before, but didn't care about. They were just stored in the depths of his mind. His daily words and actions, even if it was just a casual glance, would unknowingly leave a memory in the depths of his mind. Under normal circumstances, he would never think of it. Only under certain special circumstances would it unconsciously emerge. That was also a kind of accumulation. The more he heard, the more he saw, and the more he thought, the more he would be inspired. Often, it would be a flash of inspiration, just like Chumu's current situation. Staring at the countless strands of origin energy that were like swimming fishes, Chumu's eyes became brighter and brighter. An idea gradually became clear. Since my All-Heaven Sword Tao is not complete now, and I can't forge a complete All-Heaven Sword, then I'll forge it separately, Chumu thought to himself. This was his current idea, and it was also a very feasible idea. Following this idea, Chumu continued to think. More and more inspiration emerged in his mind. With the eruption of inspiration, Chumu understood more and more what kind of sword he wanted to forge. Perhaps it would not be an exaggeration to call it a divine sword, if only he could realize it. If I want to do it, just this alone is not enough, Chumu thought as he stared at the slowly revolving ball of liquid. His eyes flickered with light. Immediately, Chumu removed even more metal from his space ring. He also took out many swords, blades, and other weapons. He used the flames of origin energy to melt all the metal and blades, removing the impurities and leaving only the purest parts behind. He fused them into the ball of liquid, causing it to grow larger and larger. Afterwards, he also took out origin energy stones and thunderstones, melting them and fusing them into the ball of liquid. However, the volume of the liquid only grew slightly. "Fuse into my body," Chumu called out. The ball of liquid immediately began to move, approaching Chumu. Afterwards, it came into contact with Chumu's body, enveloping him completely. Chumu sank into it. Gradually, the ball of liquid entered Chumu's body bit by bit. Chumu felt like his body was about to explode. He trembled unconsciously as he endured tremendous pain. However, in order to complete the All-Heaven Sword in his heart, Chumu had no choice but to do this. Either he did not do it, or he did it best. Only after 2 hours did the ball of liquid fuse into Chumu's body. He did not appear to have changed at all, but Chumu's face became rather twisted. This was because waves of pain constantly swept through every inch of his body. He felt like his body was about to explode or be torn apart. Chumu endured the intense pain. He also felt like his body had become much heavier. If he weighed around 100 kilograms in the past, he definitely weighed over 1,000 kilograms or even 10,000 kilograms right now. The heaviness and pressure made Chumu feel extremely uncomfortable, but he needed to overcome it. He had to overcome the feeling first and get used to it completely. This process took Chumu a few days to complete. After he did it, he felt like he had returned to normal. However, in reality, his weight still exceeded 10,000 kilograms. He also did a test and found that the defensive power of his body seemed to be much stronger than before. In short, Chumu who practiced the truth-seeking technique, originally had a tyrannical physique that was not inferior to a body cultivator of the same level. After he obtained the great true wheel, he was like a devil soul of the demon race. He was even stronger than a body cultivator of the same level. Now, because of the fusion of various metal essences, Chu Mu's strength and speed did not increase at all. However, his defensive power had increased sharply. It was 10 times stronger than before. It was as if he was wearing a battle armor that had fused with his body. The increase in his defensive power meant that Chu Mu's ability to survive had increased. This was a good thing. However, Chu Mu's goal was not to increase his defensive power. Compared to his real goal, he did not care about increasing his defensive power by 10 times. A sword cultivator who only knew how to defend was a joke. This was because sword cultivators represented attack. To a sword cultivator, a good sword was more valuable than a good battle armor. The difference was more than 10 times. Chu Mu began the third step of reforging the godly sword. The materials used to forge the sword had already been turned into essence and integrated into his body. The third step was to use his sword path origin to refine the essence of the materials used to forge the sword and further strengthen it. With the help of the unique environment of the original universe, Chu Mu could better complete this step. This was because using the sword path origin to refine the sword would obviously consume the power of the sword path origin. If he did not have the cultivation environment of the original universe to replenish the consumption, Chu Mu's body would be implicated and even his foundation would be damaged. The transforming sword path origin was refining the essence of the materials used to forge the sword bit by bit. It also seemed to be refining Chu Mu's body, causing it to transform into an even more mysterious state. The sword path origin was being consumed, and the power of the universe origin was constantly being replenished, forming a virtuous cycle. Chu Mu's cultivation was also unknowingly improving bit by bit. This refining process took half a year before it ended. Chu Mu completed the third step of reforging the godly sword. This refining method was Chu Mu integrating the essence of the body sword path into his own sword path of all heavens. He used his body as a sword and his person as a sword. He and the sword were completely integrated into one, and there was no distinction between the two. This was even more profound than being one with the sword. In terms of level, it was not inferior to being in the realm of swordsmanship. This was different from being in the realm of swordsmanship, but it would not conflict with each other. It could even complement each other to a certain extent. That's right. Chu Mu had absorbed the essence of the body sword path, but he did not apply it like he did with the body sword path. Instead, he integrated it into his own sword path, further perfecting his sword path of all heavens. Now, it's the last step of the reforging, Chu Mu muttered to himself, his eyes shining with divine light. He grabbed at the void with his right hand, and there seemed to be a surge of aura in his body. It instantly gathered in his right hand and extended out. A sword was held in his hand. This was a golden long sword. The body of the sword was long and thin, and it gave off an incomparably sharp feeling. At a glance, one could tell that such a sword was most suitable for piercing and slicing. It was astonishingly sharp. Immediately, Chu Mu extended his left hand and clenched the void. As power surged, another sword appeared in his left hand. The sword was fiery red, and it burned like a raging flame, exuding an astonishingly high temperature. Regardless of whether it was a golden sword or a fiery red sword, they all exuded the aura of a great emperor. That's right, these were great emperor-level swords. Regardless of whether it was a golden sword or a fiery red sword, they all possessed a few of the abilities of the perishing sword. They also had the ability of the only sun. For example, the golden sword contained the aura of the origin of gold, while the fiery red sword exuded the aura of the origin of fire. The aura of the origin power and the origin power were completely different. They were on a different level. In theory, the aura of the origin power and the great path were on the same level. However, because they were closely related to the origin power. The aura of the origin power was stronger than the Great Path. Great Emperor-level swords mostly contained the power of the Great Path. There were very few that contained the aura of the origin power. However, swords that contained the aura of the origin power were the best swords of the same level. They had astonishing potential, and they were the kind of swords that could be promoted to the sovereign level. Chapter 2252. The vast void was dotted with countless stars. It was deep and mysterious, and it was filled with the desire to explore. A pitch-black, sword-shaped flying ship flew past at an astonishing speed. There were 3 words written on the side of the flying ship: matchless ship. Unparalleled ship was not a cross-region flying ship, but it was more outstanding than normal flying ships. Its speed surpassed the Great Emperor realm and reached the small Dominator rank. It was extremely shocking, and its master was called Chu-Mu. After Chu-Mu broke through to the Emperor realm, he was rewarded with a palace and a flying ship. It was a specially built flying ship named Matchless Ship. Chu-Mu only got it after he left the primal universe. Inside the Matchless Ship, Chu-Mu split his attention between driving the flying ship and cultivating at the same time. After 4 years of cultivation in the primal universe, Chu-Mu had not only stabilized his cultivation base, but he had also improved unknowingly. He had resonated with the origin of the primal universe. After that, he had reforged the divine sword, causing his cultivation base to improve by leaps and bounds. From the low-level first-step Emperor realm to the mid-level first-step Emperor realm, and then to the high-level first-step Emperor realm. In the Emperor realm, it was difficult to advance in every level. Under normal circumstances, it would take at least a few decades to advance from the low level to the mid-level. Even if one had outstanding talent and was in a good cultivation environment, it would still take at least a dozen years. The time needed to advance from the mid-level to the high level was even longer. Hence, the time needed to advance from the low level to the high level was at least 20 to 30 years, and it was normal for it to take more than 100 years. Chu-Mu, on the other hand, had completed this step in a short 4 years. His cultivation base had completely stabilized at the high-level first-step Emperor realm, and there were no signs of it being unstable. This kind of improvement speed could be called a miracle, but Chu-Mu knew that it couldn't be replicated. Everything had to be done by chance. When I was a low-level first-step Emperor realm, I could fight against an ordinary low-level second-step Emperor realm. Now that I've advanced to the high-level first-step Emperor realm, my strength won't be any weaker than an ordinary high-level second-step Emperor realm. Chu-Mu thought to himself. A high-level second-step Emperor realm expert was considered to be in the middle of the Emperor realm. He had the ability to protect himself. After leaving the primal universe and returning to ancient Sword City, Xue Yinling had yet to return. Chu-Mu left a message and entrusted someone to pass it to her using 1 clan merit point. Then he left ancient Sword City and went through the door of time and space. Chu-Mu's goal was the Azure Domain. That's right, when he left the Azure Domain, it wasn't of his own free will. He was forced to leave, and when he was forced to leave, he was ambushed and almost died in the explosion of the flying ship. Fortunately, his luck was good, and he accidentally entered the Massacre Royal Palace and then the Massacre World. Since then, he had risen and accumulated by leaps and bounds. Now, he finally broke through and became a great emperor. Back then, after being plotted against, Chu-Mu had decided that one day when he had enough strength, he would definitely go back and ask for an explanation and justice. Now the time had come. The Azure Domain was a low-level domain in the Primal Origin realm. It was located at the edge of the Primal Origin realm. From ancient Sword City to the Azure Domain, without the door of time and space, Chu-Mu didn't know how long it would take to reach it. It would take at least a few hundred years. Using a few hundred years to travel was too much of a waste for Chu-Mu. At least for now, it was because if he used a few hundred years to cultivate, he might have risen to the sovereign realm. Fortunately, although the Azure Domain was remote, the Sword Alliance had set up a door of time and space that was relatively close to the Azure domain. After rushing out of the door of time and space, Chu-Mu took out the matchless flying ship and flew to the Azure domain. Although the distance wasn't far, with the speed of the flying ship, it would take at least a month to reach it. Chu-Mu wouldn't waste a month. Although he couldn't cultivate wholeheartedly, it wasn't a bad idea to multitask and use it to comprehend the All-Heavens Sword Way and become more familiar with the All-Heavens Sword. Swords appeared in Chu-Mu's left and right hands from time to time. There were golden swords, red swords, green swords, blue swords, and brown swords. These represented the swords of the 5 elements. The All-Heavens Sword was the name of the swords that Chu-Mu had recast. The complete All-Heavens Sword was like the All-Heavens Sword Way. It contained countless mysteries and had incredible power. However, the All-Heavens Sword Way was not complete, and the corresponding All-Heavens Sword was also not complete. Chu-Mu used a special method to integrate the essence of the sword into his own body. In this way, he could condense the corresponding swords according to the mysteries of the All-Heavens Sword Way. The golden swords were the All-Heavens Gold Sword, the red ones were the All-Heavens Fire Sword, the blue ones were the All-Heavens Water Sword, the green ones were the All-Heavens Wood Sword, and the brown ones were the All-Heavens Earth Sword. In the first stage of the 4 years of comprehension in the primal universe, there were many mysteries that had been integrated into the All-Heavens Sword Way origin. However, most of them were only superficial. The superficial mysteries weren't enough for the All-Heavens Sword to condense. Therefore, Chu-Mu could only condense the All-Heavens 5-element sword. Besides Chu-Mu's own efforts, he had another helper. Little Tian, how long more do I need to condense the All-Heavens Wind Sword? Chu-Mu seemed to be talking to himself. Master, in another half a month, the All-Heavens Wind Sword will be successfully condensed. A tender voice sounded like that of a child. After condensing the All-Heavens Wind Sword, I'll condense the All-Heavens Thunder Sword. Chu-Mu instructed. With this little helper, he felt a lot more relaxed. Of course, he still needed to comprehend the mysteries of the origin by himself. However, after comprehending the mysteries of the origin to a certain extent, he could condense the All-Heavens Sword. However, it still required some time and energy. This little helper could help him solve this problem. Chu-Mu named this little helper All-Heavens. Its nickname was Little Tian. It was the sword spirit of the All-Heavens Sword. Spirit swords were called spirit swords when they had spirits. However, the spirituality of spirit swords was weak. Only after they evolved into great emperor-level swords would their spirituality be strengthened to a certain extent. The All-Heavens Sword had become great emperor-level swords because it had been tempered by the aura of the origin. It had higher potential. Therefore, the sword spirits formed were more spiritually intelligent. However, the newly born All-Heavens Sword spirits did not possess the ability to manifest themselves. Time flew by. Half a month later, inside the matchless ship, Chu-Mu clenched his right hand into a fist. A cool breeze seemed to blow past. As the power surged, it rushed out from his palm. The wind howled. The green radiance swallowed and condensed into a sharp sword. This sharp sword was green in color. It was very thin and light. All-Heavens Wind Sword. Every All-Heavens sword had inherited the abilities of the Li Perishing Sword. On the basis of various abilities, they each contain their own unique abilities. For example, the All-Heavens Gold Sword was even sharper. The All-Heavens Fire Sword contained a terrifying high temperature. The All-Heavens Wind Sword was lighter and faster. Furthermore, it had a sharpness that made it easier to cut the target. The more All-Heavens Sword was condensed, the more varied Chu-Mu's fighting style would be. Time flew by, and another half a month passed. In Chu-Mu's hand, lightning radiance pervaded. The lightning arcs jumped and finally condensed into a sword. Lightning surrounded the sword. All-Heavens Lightning Sword. Until now, Chu-Mu had condensed 7 All-Heavens Swords. At this moment, through the transparent crystal wall of the matchless ship, Chu-Mu saw an azure blue color that was as magnificent as the sea. The azure domain. It was finally here. For no reason. Chu-Mu's heart surged with excitement. The azure domain was one of the countless low-grade domains in the Origin Yuan world. It was located at the edge of the Origin Yuan world and was very inconspicuous. But Chu-Mu had a special feeling towards it. This was the place where he had descended into the Source Realm. It was the starting point of his new journey, and the body he occupied was the place where he had been born and raised. This place had the roots of this body, as well as the path of his younger brother, King Chu. Thinking about Chu Wangdao, Chu-Mu's mouth unconsciously curled into a smile. He also treated Chu Wangdao as his younger brother. After not seeing him for so many years, he did not know how Chu Wangdao was doing. Unconsciously, a sense of impatience rose in his heart. The azure blue color became clearer and clearer. The matchless ship was getting closer and closer to the azure domain. In front of him, a deep azure color filled his eyes. The ship passed through the barrier of the azure domain and truly entered the azure domain. Although he had left for many years, Chu-Mu still remembered the terrain of the azure domain very clearly. He was not in a hurry to go to the azure sacred palace, but went to Sword City. The matchless ship's speed was extremely fast. It was equivalent to the flying speed of a small sovereign realm expert. Thus, it quickly entered the southern sky domain and flew toward Sword City. The outline of Sword City appeared in Chu-Mu's vision. The matchless ship stopped. Then, Chu-Mu appeared outside the matchless ship and kept it into his spatial ring. Looking at the outline of Sword City, Chu-Mu was very familiar with it. This was because Sword City had not changed much. Stepping into Sword City from the city gate, although Sword City had not changed much, Chu-Mu was different from before. Previously, when he entered Sword City, his cultivation was not at the Nirvana realm. Now he had stepped into the Great Emperor realm and became a Sword Emperor. Standing at a different height and looking at the same scenery, there would often be different feelings. Step by step, neither fast nor slow, Chu-Mu walked on the streets of Sword City. Looking at the people coming and going, his heart was calm. It was as if he was isolated from the world, but also as if he was one with it. This strange feeling made Chu-Mu's state of mind calm. It was as if there was no wind or waves in the sea, but in the depths of the sea, there were surging undercurrents. Chu-Mu walked neither fast nor slow. His direction was the Chu Sect Sword Mansion. The Chu Sect Sword Mansion was established by the father of the Chu Royal Halls, Chu Wangdao. In Flower City, the Chu Royal Halls, Chu Wangdao, and Chu Wangdao inherited it. Due to various reasons, they finally settled down in Sword City. When Chu-Mu was still here, the Chu Sect Sword Mansion had developed well and had great momentum. He did not know if the Chu Sect Sword Mansion had developed well or if it had collapsed in the past few years. As he walked, Chu-Mu's calm heart gradually became turbulent. Chapter 2253. Inside the Chu Sect Sword Pavilion, there was a group of swordsmen practicing basic sword techniques. Their movements were neat and uniform. Around them, there was a young man walking slowly, carefully observing the movements of each swordsman. This young man's face, if one looked closely, was somewhat similar to Chu-Mu's in the past. At that moment, a figure strode out from inside. When he passed by the swordsman practicing, he greeted the young man. "Wangdao will go out first." The man smiled and said, "You can teach them more. Brother Shang, go ahead. I'll take care of them." Chu Wangdao smiled. When Shang Zhizhen strode out of the door, he suddenly stopped. It was as if he had been immobilized. He couldn't move at all. His face was full of astonishment. Then it gradually melted and turned into a joyful smile. "Brother Shang, long time no see. How are you?" An indifferent voice sounded and entered Shang Zhizhen's ears. It was a greeting that he hadn't heard for a long time. Good. Look at me. I've reached the peerless plane. Shang Zhizhen laughed and immediately shouted, "Wang Dao, your brother is back." As soon as he finished speaking, a gust of wind blew past. There was another person at the door. "Brother." Chu Wang Dao saw the person in front of him. He was so excited that his whole body trembled. His eyes were red. Back then, when Chu Mu left, Chu Wang Dao wasn't very old. Moreover, he had always been under the protection of his father and brother, so he had a certain degree of dependence. Chu Mu's departure had a certain impact on Chu Wang Dao. Fortunately, before Chu Mu left, he had slowly taught Chu Wang Dao, allowing Chu Wang Dao to gradually be able to rely on himself. Now, Chu Wang Dao was in charge of the Chu Sword Pavilion and had become the master of the pavilion. He gradually gained his own temperament and majesty. However, he still missed his elder brother in his heart. His elder brother was connected to him by blood. Chu Wang Dao didn't know how long it would take for him to see his brother again. He didn't even know where his brother had gone. Even if he wanted to look for him, he didn't know where to start. He didn't expect his brother to come back. Shang Zhizhen was very happy and Chu Wang Dao was even happier. Seeing Chu Wang Dao, Chu Mu's heart couldn't help but feel excited. It had been more than 20 years since he left the Azure Domain. Chu Wang Dao had also grown from a 10-year-old child to a 40-year-old adult. Chu Mu could tell at a glance that Chu Wang Dao's cultivation base had risen from the original origin realm to the third refinement of the exceptional realm. In the past 20 years, Chu Mu had experienced many things. With his vast knowledge, he knew that although Chu Wang Dao's cultivation talent wasn't bad, in the human race it wasn't eye-catching. At best, it was at the level of 1 star on the Divine Talent Monument. In more than 20 years, he had advanced from the true realm to the second refinement of the exceptional realm. Other than his talent, he also had the help of various resources from the Sword City. As for Shang Zhizhen, he was originally in the 10,000 ancient realm. Now that 20 years had passed, his cultivation base had also risen to the exceptional realm, surpassing Chu Wang Dao. He was in the 4th refinement of the exceptional realm. With their cultivation talent, if they were in a higher domain, their current cultivation base would only be higher. The cultivation environment of a lower domain was very restrictive. After the excitement, Shang Zhizhen and Chu Wang Dao also slowly calmed down. As for the matter that Shang Zhizhen was going to do, he temporarily put it aside because it was not so important. "Brother Shang, where are Brother Ge and Brother Wang?" Chu Mu asked Ge Lu and Wang Chaoying. Hearing Chu Mu's words, Shang Zhizhen's face flashed with a touch of sadness. Ge Lu and Wang Chaoying both died 10 years ago. Shang Zhizhen sighed softly. They went to explore a secret realm, and in the end died in the secret realm. Hearing Shang Zhizhen's words, Chu Mu was also a little sad, but he was not affected by this kind of emotion. Cultivators would always face all kinds of dangers on the path of cultivation. If they wanted to continue to improve, they would always face death. Therefore, there was nothing strange about falling on the path of cultivation. Even Chu Mu himself did not have 100% certainty that he would not die. He could only do his best to improve himself, to ensure that he could continue to improve, to ensure that he could continue to improve, to ensure that he could go further and to see higher things. In Chu Mu's interspatial ring, there was a lot of good wine, all of which were his spoils of war. These good wine contained rich spiritual qi, which was very beneficial to cultivators, especially those in the exceptional realm. It was like an elixir with significant effects. Chu Wang Dao and Shang Zhizhen drank a lot, and both of them were drunk. The spiritual qi of the good wine was constantly nourishing their bodies. Chu Mu was not drunk. His alcohol tolerance was much better than before. Coupled with his great Emperor realm cultivation base, he could easily refine the power of the good wine without being affected in the slightest. In the dead of night, Chu Mu sat on the roof of the Sword Pavilion, looking at the blue sky of the bounded domain, returning to the blue bounded domain, returning to the Chu sect Sword Pavilion, made him sigh with emotion. However, seeing Chu Wang Dao Gradually growing up, he was finally relieved. In the following days, Chu Mu naturally stayed in the Chu sect Sword Pavilion. There were no changes in the Sword Pavilion because of Chu Mu's return. The Sword Pavilion had been completely handed over to Chu Mu, and Chu Mu no longer interfered in it. However, Chu Mu did guide Chu Wangdao's cultivation, which cleared away the fog in Chu Wangdao's mind. Chu Wangdao suddenly understood more. His swordsmanship had improved further on the foundation of the human realm, reaching the high level of the human realm. The improvement of the swordsmanship brought about an increase in the power of the swordsmanship. With the same cultivation base, Chu Wangdao's strength was a little stronger. Shang Zhizhen naturally received Chu Mu's guidance. In just a few days, his strength had increased significantly. This made them very curious about Chu Mu's current strength, but they couldn't see through it at all. It was as if they were looking up to a high mountain. During this time, Chu Mu naturally went to see the Sword City Lord. The Sword City Lord was a third-step Great Emperor Realm sword cultivator. In the past, Chu Mu was like a bright star that he could only look up to. But now, although Chu Mu's strength was still inferior to his, he was also in the Emperor Realm. We haven't seen each other for more than 20 years, but Little Friend's cultivation has also reached this step. The Sword City Lord was shocked. In a short 20 years, Chu Mu had advanced from the immemorial realm to the first step Great Emperor Realm. This kind of cultivation speed was too shocking. Even though he had lived for so long and had seen so many geniuses, he still felt like he was dreaming. Chu Mu was also grateful to the Sword City Master. Back then, the Sword City Master had helped him a lot. Moreover, the reason why the Chu Gate Sword Academy could grow better and better, other than Chu Wangdao's own ability and Shang Zhizhen's help, was also inseparable from the Sword City Master's secret help. After chatting with the Sword City Lord for a while, Chu Mu left. Time flew by. From the time Chu Mu returned to the Chu Gate Sword School, a month had passed. In this 1 month, Chu Mu only maintained the most basic cultivation, and most of his time was spent teaching Chu Wangdao. Chu Wangdao's cultivation had risen from the 2nd refinement realm to the 3rd refinement realm. His sword skills had also improved by leaps and bounds, and he was close to the peak of the human realm. At this rate, he would be able to break through to the peak of the human realm in half a year's time. Chu Wangdao's personal efforts and the development of the Chu Gate Sword School made Chu Mu feel at ease. It's time to settle the matter of the past. Chu Mu said inwardly, Wangdao, I have something to do. After I'm done, I'm not sure if I'll return. Chu Mu called Chu Wangdao over and said to him directly, These are all cultivation resources. Keep them for yourself and cultivate well. In the future, we brothers will meet again. Big brother. Chu Wangdao was reluctant to part with Huang Xiaolong. Chu Mu patted Chu Wangdao's shoulder and didn't say anything else. His figure flickered and he disappeared from sight. Chu Wangdao was now Deshang's man. With his 3rd refinement realm cultivation, he could be considered to have the ability to protect himself in the Azure World region's South Star region. Not to mention, Chu Mu had left him a lot of cultivation resources. These resources were enough for him to cultivate for a long time and raise his strength to a higher level. Big brother, I will definitely cultivate hard. In the future, we brothers will definitely meet again. Chu Wangdao said. The matchless flying ship soared through the sky, flying out of the South Star region. Its target was the Azure World region's Azure Holy Palace, which was also the center of the Azure World region. With the matchless flying ship's small sovereign realm flying speed, it didn't take long to leave the South Star region and enter the Azure World region. When they were close to the Azure Holy Palace, Chu Mu left the matchless flying ship and put it away. After notifying the Azure Holy Palace, Chu Mu entered the Azure Holy Palace. First step Emperor Realm. Are you really Chu Mu? The Azure Holy Palace Master stared at Chu Mu in shock. 20 years ago, Chu Mu's cultivation was merely in the eternal ancient realm. 20 years later, when he appeared in front of him again, he had already reached the Emperor realm. Moreover, he was a first-step Emperor realm expert. In a short 20 years, the Azure Holy Prince and Holy Maiden Azure Holy Prince, whose cultivation was higher than Chu Mu's, had only reached the lesser Holy Venerable realm. As for himself, he was at the peak of the third-step Emperor realm. Holy Palace Master, it's been a long time. I am Chu Mu. Chu Mu smiled faintly. He could understand the shock in the Azure Holy Palace Master's heart, but he didn't feel proud of it. After all, the reason why he was able to obtain his current strength was because he had walked out from countless life and death situations. After all, the Azure Holy Palace Master had been through a lot. After a while, he regained his composure. However, when he looked at Chu Mu, there was an indescribable feeling in his eyes. I knew it. You are definitely extraordinary. The Azure World region is too small for you to grow properly. Leaving the Azure World region is indeed an excellent choice. The Azure Holy Palace Master sighed. Then he asked curiously, I wonder where you went after leaving the Azure World region? What did you experience? I went through a lot. I only managed to reach where I am today by narrowly escaping death. Chu Mu smiled faintly. The Azure Holy Palace Master couldn't see through his thoughts. Chapter 2254. What? Chu Mu, the 6th place of the Great Alliance competition. It's really you. Sacred Lord Azure's eyes widened and his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. His body trembled as if he was struck by lightning. His mind was in a trance, and he felt as if he was in a dream. After a long time, Sacred Lord Azure finally calmed down. He looked at Chu Mu's young face that was filled with indifference. There was an incomparable confidence in Chu Mu's eyes. It wasn't arrogance, it was the result of countless life and death experiences and countless defeats. Letting out a breath, Azure Holy Master completely accepted this reality. However, her gaze towards Chu Mu was very complicated. She had an indescribable feeling in her heart. She felt that her many years of cultivation had all been wasted on a pig or a dog. All right, compared to the top peerless geniuses, there was nothing he could compare to. He was very happy as Chu Mu was born in the Azure Boundary. His growth would affect the Azure Boundary's fate. Perhaps because of the short time and the fact that Chu Mu wasn't strong enough, the effects couldn't be seen. However, after some time, or when Chu Mu reached the Sovereign Realm, the effects on the Azure Boundary would become clearer. Sacred Lord, I have something to deal with this time, Chu Mu said as his eyes shone. 20 years ago, a great emperor said that he was under the orders of Sacred Lord to send me out of the Azure Boundary. Is that true? That's right. At that time, we were unable to fight against the experts of the Scarlet Boundary. We could only send you out of the Azure Boundary to a higher boundary so that you could increase your strength in a shorter period of time. Sacred Lord Azure smiled. Now that I see you, I know that my decision back then was correct. Chu Mu looked at Sacred Lord Azure. He wasn't afraid because Sacred Lord Azure was a peak third step Great Emperor. From Sacred Lord Azure's eyes, he could tell that Sacred Lord Azure wasn't lying. Holy Master, do you know that back then I almost died in the chaotic void? Chu Mu said neither quickly nor slowly. His tone was extremely calm. What do you mean? Azure Holy Master's heart shook, feeling that Chu Mu was implying something. The flying ship that sent me away had been tampered with. It exploded not long after leaving the Azure Realm. Chu Mu said in a calm tone as if he was talking about someone else. I sensed the danger ahead of time and used all my strength to break open the door of the flying ship. The moment the flying ship exploded, I rushed out of the flying ship. Hearing Chu Mu's words, Azure's Sacred Lord's face darkened. Chu Mu didn't say much. Compared to the entire process, it was very short. However, from what Chu Mu said, Azure Holy Lord could imagine how dangerous it was. The words "used all my strength to break open the door" were enough to show that the door of the flying ship had been tampered with as well. The purpose was to prevent people from leaving the flying ship. It was no wonder that Azure Holy Lord's face turned so pale. Back then, he had ordered a first-step Great Emperor from the Sacred Palace to secretly take Chu Mu out of the Azure Realm on the flying ship. However, he hadn't expected that such a thing would happen. Azure Holy Lord didn't think that Chu Mu was there to amuse him. Why would a peerless genius, ranked 6th in the Grand Alliance tournament, come here just to make fun of him? In other words, the flying ship had been tampered with to kill Chu Mu. The person who had tampered with it was undoubtedly the first-step Great Emperor he had sent out back then. Thinking of this, Azure Holy Lord couldn't help but feel afraid. If that person had succeeded, wouldn't Chu Mu be dead? Wouldn't that be a great loss to the Azure Realm and the entire human race? Killing intent surged from the depths of his heart. Azure Saint Lord had the urge to find that one-step Great Emperor and execute him. Holy Lord, I didn't die back then. I decided that I would personally take revenge in the future. Now I'm back. Chu Mu said. He could see through Azure Holy Lord's thoughts at a glance. However, he wanted to do it himself. All right. Azure Holy Lord agreed. Men, bring Bai Gaoran over to see me. Bai Gaoran had been very careful in the past 20 years because he had tampered with the airship, causing it to explode not long after leaving the Azure bounded domain. After returning to the Azure Holy Palace, he felt a little guilty, so he stayed in seclusion. Fortunately, he hadn't been discovered, and he gradually relaxed. After modifying the flying ship and causing it to explode, Huang Xiaolong had also obtained a lot of benefits from the Scarlet Red World Scarlet Flame Land. Therefore, in the past 20 years, Huang Xiaolong's cultivation had increased significantly. He had risen from mid-level Emperor Realm to high-level Emperor Realm, and his strength had also increased significantly. After 20 years, Bai Gaoran had almost forgotten about what had happened back then. Because it was already in the past, there was no need to remember it. He didn't know why he was suddenly summoned by Azure Holy Lord. However, as an Emperor Realm expert of the Azure Holy Palace, his status in the Azure Holy Palace was still very high. Therefore, he wasn't worried at all. When Bai Gaoran stepped into the hall, he saw Chu Mu's back. For a moment, he felt that Chu Mu was familiar, but he couldn't remember where. He didn't think too much about it and strode into the hall. Greetings, Holy Lord. May I know what orders you have for me? Bai Gaoran bowed respectfully and said, Bai Gaoran, turn around and see who is behind you. Azure Holy Lord's tone was cold, and it made Bai Gaoran's body tremble. When he turned around, it was as if he had been struck by lightning. His entire body trembled, and he became motionless like a wooden statue. Bai Gaoran's eyes widened. His eyeballs looked as if they were about to fall out of their sockets. His pupils contracted to the size of needles. For a moment, he even thought that he was hallucinating. Soon, Bai Gaoran reacted and pretended to be surprised. You are Chu Mu. I haven't seen you for more than 20 years. Your cultivation base has increased by so much. Bai Gaoran's cultivation base was the same as Chu Mu's, but his level was lower. Therefore, he couldn't accurately determine Chu Mu's cultivation base. He only felt that it was unfathomable, but he didn't think that Chu Mu was a great emperor. After all, when Chu Mu left more than 20 years ago, his cultivation base was only at the immemorial realm. Now that more than 20 years had passed, even if he was a genius, it would be good if he could reach the Saint Venerable realm. As for why he couldn't see through Chu Mu's cultivation base, it could only be attributed to his cultivation technique or other reasons. You must be very surprised that I didn't die back then. Chu Mu's words were very direct. What did you say? Bai Gaoran was confused and immediately became angry. Don't tell me that after you left the Azure World, the people from the Scarlet World continued to chase after you? It had to be said that Bai Gaoran's acting skills were quite good. He acted as if he was standing in Chu Mu's shoes and was angry. Chu Mu's gaze didn't change. Like an ancient well, he stared at Bai Gaoran. Bai Gaoran, on the other hand, fearlessly stared back at Chu Mu, as if he really hadn't done anything. Bai Gaoran, what benefits did the people from the Scarlet Flame world give you to betray the sacred palace? Azure Holy Lord asked. Although Bai Gaoran's expression was very natural, Azure Holy Lord clearly saw his reaction when he saw Chu Mu and became even more certain. What did you say, Holy Lord? Bai Gaoran acted as if he didn't know what was going on and said angrily, Holy Lord, the sun and moon can bear witness to my loyalty to the sacred palace. Azure Holy Lord and Chu Mu looked at Bai Gaoran's performance as if they were watching a joke. They were already certain that Bai Gaoran was behind the incident back then. Back then, I almost died in the explosion of the flying ship. I swore that one day I would come back and seek justice. Chu Mu looked at Bai Gaoran and said unhurriedly, Now that I'm back, I feel that you're not magnanimous enough. Actually, it doesn't matter whether you admit it or not. Chu Mu said, and then looked at Azure Holy Lord. Holy Lord, today I will kill this person. Sword light flashed as soon as he said that. Bai Gaoran reacted quickly when he heard Chu Mu's words. He blasted out a palm, and a powerful palm wind swept out toward Chu Mu. He quickly retreated and turned into a stream of light and rushed out of the hall. Bai Gaoran knew that he had been exposed. Even if he didn't admit it, there was nothing he could do. After all, Bai Gaoran didn't care whether he admitted it or not. If Chu Mu was alone, he would definitely kill Chu Mu. However, Azure Holy Lord was present. Azure Holy Lord was a peak 3rd Step Emperor Realm expert. He was several times stronger than Bai Gaoran, a high-level 1st Step Emperor Realm expert. In front of Azure Holy Lord, if Bai Gaoran wanted to kill Chu Mu, he wouldn't even be able to escape. Therefore, Bai Gaoran attacked Chu Mu while he retreated. It would be best if he could kill Chu Mu. Unfortunately, he had underestimated Chu Mu's strength. Sword light whistled through the air and sliced through Bai Gaoran's palm wind as if it was a thin piece of paper. The sharp sword light carried a shocking chill as it flew towards Bai Gaoran at an alarming speed. Bai Gaoran was a high-level 1st Step Emperor Realm expert. He wasn't weak, but he was only at the average level. Chu Mu was also a high-level 1st Step Emperor Realm expert. His strength was comparable to a high-level 2nd Step Emperor Realm expert. The gap between the two of them was too big. Just as Azure Holy Lord was about to attack, Chu Mu's sword light was already flying towards Bai Gaoran. It was even faster. Just as Bai Gaoran was about to rush out of the hall, he felt a sharp pain in his body. That pain felt like his body was being torn apart. One sword, only one sword. Chu Mu had only used one sword to cut Bai Gaoran in half and shatter his soul. Azure Holy Lord had no choice but to retract his palm. He knew that Chu Mu was a high-level 1st Step Emperor Realm expert. He also knew that Bai Gaoran was a high-level 1st Step Emperor Realm expert. He was certain that Bai Gaoran wasn't a match for Chu Mu. However, Bai Gaoran was killed in one strike. This was too fast. Chapter 2255. I didn't expect you to be so strong. Azure Holy Lord's gaze became even more complicated. Not only did his cultivation increase quickly, he could even kill someone of the same cultivation level as him. One had to know that it was 10 times harder for a great emperor to fight someone of a higher cultivation level than a great emperor. Chu Mu didn't say much about it, as there was nothing to brag about. After killing him, I'll have completed a part of my objective. Chu Mu said, Are you planning to take revenge on the people of the Scarlet Flame region? Azure Holy Lord was shocked. That's right. Chu Mu nodded. Young friend, I have a piece of advice, but I don't know if you'll listen to it. Azure Holy Lord's expression became serious. The Scarlet Flame region belongs to the Scarlet Flame region, and the Scarlet Flame region is a middle-ranked region. It's much stronger than the Azure region. There are more great emperors and sovereign realm experts there. Young friend, you're quite strong now, but I personally feel that it's still not enough to fight against the experts of the Scarlet Flame region. Therefore, I suggest that you bear with it for a while longer. Perhaps in a few decades you can go to the Crimson Flame boundary to seek justice when your cultivation base improves to the third step Great Emperor Realm, said Saint Leader Azure. Don't worry, Holy Lord. I know that I'm not strong enough to fight against all the experts of the Scarlet Flame region. Therefore, I won't fight against them directly. Chu Mu said. His idea was simple. He wouldn't fight against them directly, but he could go to the Scarlet Flame region first to check out the situation. Then he would find a chance to take action. He wouldn't be so stupid as to go straight to the Scarlet Flame region. It's good that you have a plan, Azure Holy Lord said. However, you must be careful. Holy Lord, please send my regards to the Azure Holy Lord. Chu Mu nodded and said. After leaving the Azure Holy Palace, he boarded the matchless ship and flew out of the Azure region. He had finished his business in the Azure Holy Palace, and there was no need for him to stay. Azure Holy Lord's gaze became deeper as he looked at the matchless ship's back. I believe that in the future, Chu Mu will become a powerhouse of the human race. Azure Holy Lord seemed to be talking to himself. The overlords of a race were usually experts that surpassed the sovereign realm. If Chu Mu could become a demigod sovereign in the future, then the Azure realm would be greatly affected. It might even transform into a high-level realm. Throughout history, there had been people who had advanced from a lower realm to a middle realm, and then to a higher realm. Chu Mu's arrival in the Azure Sacred Palace didn't alarm anyone other than the Azure Sacred Master. Apart from the Azure Sacred Ancestor who had saved him in the past, he didn't care about the others, including the Azure Sacred Sun and the Azure Saintess. After the matchless ship rushed out of the Azure domain, its speed increased by another step. Reaching the primal chaos void, it flew towards the Scarlet Red domain. Chu Mu was not sure where the Scarlet Red domain was, but the matchless ship had a domain map. A domain map was a map that recorded the location of the domains in the primal chaos void. There were many grades, and the grade was naturally related to the number of domains recorded and the clarity of the map. The matchless ship's domain map was considered to be above average, and it recorded the majority of the human race domains and a small portion of the foreign race domains. Thus, the matchless ship could find the Scarlet Red domain from the domain map and directly advance. Chu Mu was multitasking, after all, to go from the Azure domain to the Scarlet Red domain. With the matchless ship speed, it would take nearly a year. Of course, if Chu Mu took the domain crossing flying ship, it wouldn't take that long. A month would be enough. Chu Mu couldn't waste a year's time. He had to make full use of it and improve himself as much as possible. In such an environment, there wouldn't be any obvious improvement in a year's time, but cultivation was like that. Once one stopped, it could affect one's own progress. Very quickly a year had passed. Chu Mu looked through the crystal walls of the matchless ship and could clearly see a fiery red ball. That fiery red ball was like an incomparably huge fireball, burning fiercely and emitting traces of high temperature. That was the Scarlet Red domain. The matchless ship entered the Scarlet Red domain and disappeared high up in the sky. Chu Mu looked around, chose a direction, and flew at an astonishing speed. The Scarlet Red domain was a middle-grade domain, and was not something the Azure domain could compare to. If Chu Mu had just left the Azure domain 20 years ago, he would definitely be surprised, but the current him had been to higher-grade domains and had been to better cultivation grounds. A mere middle-grade domain's environment naturally wouldn't cause any waves for him. That year, the people who had invaded the Azure domain to kill him were people from the Scarlet Red domain, and thus, Chu Mu wanted to go to the Scarlet Red domain. Along the way, he directly grabbed someone and asked about the distribution of the Scarlet Red domain, and after knowing the location of the Scarlet Red domain, he quickly flew over. If he used the matchless ship to fly, its speed would naturally be faster, but the matchless ship's speed had reached the level of a junior sovereign, and there weren't many sovereign experts in the Scarlet Red domain. Therefore, it would easily attract attention and bring unnecessary trouble and affect Chu Mu's movements. After all, this wasn't the Azure domain, and in the Azure domain, Chu didn't have such apprehensions. After spending a considerable amount of time, Chu finally entered the scarlet-red domain. The scarlet-red domain's earth was reddish-brown and emitted a faint heat, as if there were blazing flames burning continuously under the earth. The scarlet-red domain was like a piece of iron, and everything on the iron plate was like a dish. The scarlet-red domain's environment also determined the cultivation path of the scarlet-red domain's cultivators. Most of them cultivated fire element, and of course there were also people who cultivated lightning element, but there were very few people who cultivated ice or water element. Chu-Mu's arrival didn't attract much attention, because his arrival was very simple and ordinary, and he didn't cause any trouble. Moreover, there were many Emperor Realm experts in the Scarlet-Red domain, and a high-level Emperor Realm expert wasn't a big deal. If they had known that this first-step Emperor Realm expert had come with ill intentions, they wouldn't have ignored him. Along the way, Chu-Mu pondered. After all, there were many Emperor Realm experts in the Scarlet-Red domain. If he chose to confront them head-on, it would be disadvantageous for him, because his strength hadn't reached the level where he could sweep away all Emperor Realm experts. The strongest force in the Scarlet-Red domain is the Scarlet Flames Palace, overseen by the Scarlet Flames ancestor. Chu-Mu thought to himself, "Those people who chased after me in the past came from the Scarlet Flames Palace." The target of Chu-Mu's revenge was precisely the Scarlet Flames Palace. Killing them head-on won't work. Assassination? An idea popped into Huang Xiaolong's mind. Assassination seemed feasible. With his strength, it wouldn't be difficult to assassinate some of the Scarlet Flames Palace's experts. For the time being, there was no better way. Chu-Mu walked around the Scarlet Flames Palace's periphery. His goal was to gather more information about the Scarlet Flames Palace's experts' movements. That way, it would be easier for him to make his move. He clearly remembered the faces of the Scarlet Flames Palace's Peerless and Emperor Realm experts who had appeared in the sky above the azure Holy Palace. These people were his target of revenge. Chu-Mu was very patient. Yes, acting as an assassin required a lot of patience. He had observed for a whole month and had figured out most of the Scarlet Flames Palace's experts' movements before he decided to make his move. During this 1 month, other than observing, Chu-Mu did not give up on cultivating. Today, he had found an opportunity. A mid-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert had left the Scarlet Flames Palace. Judging from his appearance, he seemed to be planning to leave the Scarlet Flames Palace. Acting alone and planning to leave the Scarlet Flames Palace was very suitable. Chu-Mu followed him in secret. The Scarlet Flames Palace's territory was under the Scarlet Flames Palace's control, and there were many eyes and ears. If he made a move close to the Scarlet Flames Palace, it would be easy to be discovered. Therefore, Chu-Mu followed the Scarlet Flames Palace's mid-level second-step Emperor Realm expert until he was some distance away from the Scarlet Flames Palace. Chu-Mu's goal was to assassinate the Scarlet Flames Palace's expert. Therefore, he would not foolishly appear in front of the Scarlet Flames Palace's expert and give the Scarlet Flames Palace's expert an opportunity. Seizing the opportunity, Chu-Mu executed the third level of the world's end near at hand technique. The difference of a breath's time allowed him to seize the initiative. Seizing the initiative and sneaking in to assassinate the Scarlet Flames Palace's expert, Chu-Mu even condensed the All Heavens Wind Sword and executed the All Heavens Sword Style Sword 3. His speed and power reached the pinnacle, and he did not need to make any moves. His cultivation was at the second step Great Emperor Realm, and his strength was also at the second step Great Emperor Realm. However, it was nothing to Chu-Mu, who was at least at the second step Great Emperor Realm. Seizing the initiative, sneak attack, and the difference in strength. Under these three factors, the Scarlet Flames Palace's expert was destined to meet a tragic end. Before he could react, the All Heavens Wind Sword pierced through the back of his head and came out from the space between his eyebrows. The All Heavens Wind Sword's power combined with Chu-Mu's Great True Wheel's power directly tore the mid-level second-step Emperor Realm expert's soul into shreds. The mid-level second-step Emperor realm expert didn't even have time to scream, not to mention notifying the Scarlet Flames Palace. He died in an instant. After his attack succeeded, Chu Mu waved his hand and swept the corpse into his spatial ring. He executed the second level of the world's end near at hand technique and crossed 200,000 meters in the blink of an eye. He left his original location and approached the Scarlet Flames Palace from another route. Although there were more great emperors in the Scarlet Blaze Palace than in the Azure Holy Palace, each great emperor had a high status. They were the main force, especially the second-step great emperors. After Chu Mu killed the mid-level second-step Emperor Realm expert, the Scarlet Flames Palace was alarmed. The Scarlet Flames Palace's palace master, Scarlet Dragon, was a peak third-step Emperor Realm expert. He was only a step away from breaking through to the Sovereign Realm. Of course, this step had trapped countless peak third-step Emperor Realm experts, making them unable to break through for the rest of their lives. In the main hall, Scarlet Dragon's face was gloomy. He had just sent out a second-step Emperor Realm expert to handle some matters, but he died not long after. Investigate, investigate, investigate! Scarlet Dragon was enraged, and it was as if he wanted to start a bloody storm. Chapter 2256. Under the fiery red sky, on the reddish-brown land, a red mountain stood tall and motionless. The red mountain was called Scarlet Flame Mountain. There was a group of palaces on Scarlet Flame Mountain, the Scarlet Flame Palace. At this moment, figures with terrifying auras flew out from the Scarlet Flame Palace. They flew across the sky and headed out of Scarlet Flame Mountain. These people were all great emperors from the Scarlet Flame Palace. There were more than 10 of them. For example, the Azure Holy Palace in the Azure Domain was the most powerful sect in the entire domain. However, there were no more than 20 great Emperor Realm experts in the Holy Palace. The Scarlet Blaze Palace was only the number 1 sect in the Scarlet Blaze territory. In the entire domain, it was only ranked in the top 5. However, there were more than 40 great Emperor Realm experts in it. At this moment, all 45 great emperors were on the move. They formed groups of 2 or 3 to search for the culprit. Who dares to attack the great emperors of the Scarlet Flame Palace? Great Emperor Light Thunder seemed to be talking to himself. I don't know who has the guts. Great Emperor Sun, Yen replied casually. Shadow Cloning Sword Emperor did not speak. In the entire Scarlet Flame Palace, the Palace Master Scarlet Dragon was the strongest. Next was Shadow Cloning Sword Emperor, followed by Great Emperor Light Thunder and Great Emperor Sun Yen. They were all third-step Great Emperors. In addition, there were a few third-step Great Emperors in the Scarlet Flame Palace. Chu Mu hid himself well and restrained all of his aura. If he wanted to hide, even third-step Great Emperors would not be able to find him unless he was a Dominator. However, Chu Mu had already found out that the Dominator ancestor Scarlet Flame of the Scarlet Flame Palace had left a few years ago. He had yet to return. This was also the reason why Chu Mu dared to kill the great emperors of the Scarlet Flame Palace in the territory of the Scarlet Flame Palace. Chu Mu was still no match for a third-step great emperor. Therefore, he would not attack a third-step great emperor. In fact, he would not even attack a second-step great emperor at the limit or peak second-step great emperor at the moment, unless there was a very good opportunity. Hence, Chu Mu had his eyes on the experts below the peak of the second-step great emperor realm. The 3 first-step great emperors from the Scarlet Blaze Palace formed a team and flew away from the Scarlet Blaze Palace to search for any suspicious traces. Since Ancestor Scarlet Blaze was not around, they had no better idea than this. The great Emperor Realm experts of the Crimson Blaze Palace were dispatched in unison, which obviously alarmed the other sects in the Crimson Blaze territory. They were all bewildered, not knowing what was going on. Chu Mu had his eyes on the 3 one-step great emperors from the Red Blaze Palace and was following them secretly, not to mention a first-step great emperor, a second-step great emperor, or even a third-step great emperor, would have a hard time finding Chu-Mu. Chu-Mu was not in a hurry to take action. Instead, he was following them secretly, waiting for a suitable place to strike. Ever since he was hunted down over 20 years ago and was ambushed when he was about to leave the Azure region, Chu-Mu held a grudge against the Scarlet Blaze Palace. Bai Gaoran could only be considered an accomplice who was ordered to do so. The culprit was someone from the Scarlet Blaze Palace. Hence, killing Bai Gaoran would not be considered as revenge. Increasing his cultivation base and strength to take revenge on the Scarlet Blaze Palace was one of Chu-Mu's goals for cultivation. It was not a big goal, but it had to be done. The 3 one-step Great Emperors were naturally on high alert. However, their strength was far from Chu-Mu's. All of a sudden, Chu-Mu came from afar, using the second level of the world's end near-at-hand body. In an instant, he was tens of thousands of meters away. The heavenly wind soared, rose like a gentle breeze. The 3 one-step Great Emperors did not notice at all. The sword had already pierced through their heads from the side, through their temples. It was like a barbecued meat skewer. The moment the heavenly wind soared, pierced through their heads, their souls were also torn apart. Without making any sound, the 3 one-step Great Emperors died instantly. Their corpses were stored in Chu-Mu's interspatial ring. After killing the 3 one-step Great Emperors from the Scarlet Blaze Palace, Chu-Mu used the second level of the world's end near-at-hand body and left instantly. His speed was fast, but the Scarlet Blaze Palace's reaction was not slow either. Not long after, a 3rd step Great Emperor arrived. The 3rd step Great Emperor's face was solemn as he carefully sensed the remaining aura fluctuations in the air. Soon after, he looked in the direction where Chu-Mu had left and quickly chased after him. However, he did not chase for long before he stopped because the aura fluctuations had disappeared. He was infuriated. He had clearly sensed the aura of the culprit, but he could not chase after him. That feeling almost made him explode. The 3rd step Great Emperor immediately passed the news to the other experts in the Scarlet Blaze Palace. At the same time, Chu-Mu killed a few more 1-step Great Emperors and 2nd step Great Emperors from the Scarlet Blaze Palace. The death of more than 10 Great Emperors had driven the Scarlet Blaze Palace's Palace Master, Scarlet Blaze Palace's Great Emperors, to the brink of insanity. As they could not find the culprit, they had nowhere to vent their anger. The Scarlet Blaze Palace responded by notifying the other sects in the Scarlet Blaze boundary to mobilize all of them to seal off the entire Scarlet Blaze boundary and strengthen the search. The carpet search was like catching a turtle in a jar. Chu-Mu also felt the tension. He knew that he could not take any action for the time being. Otherwise, he would be easily discovered. In that case, he would not take any action. He had to hide completely. Moreover, he had to hide close to the Scarlet Blaze Palace. The people from the Scarlet Blaze Palace would not expect him to be hiding so close. Fortunately, the Scarlet Blaze ancestor was not around. Otherwise, it would be really dangerous. Staring at the palaces in the distance, Chu-Mu suddenly had an idea. He had to sneak into the Scarlet Blaze Palace. He had killed the Great Emperors from the Scarlet Blaze Palace. Currently, he could only kill the 1-step and 2nd step Great Emperors. As for the 3rd step Great Emperors, he was no match for them. In the past, the leaders were 3 3rd step Great Emperors. The 3 of them were also the people that Chu-Mu wanted to kill the most. However, he was not strong enough. If that's the case, I'll find a chance to sneak into the Scarlet Blaze Palace and wreak havoc, Chu-Mu thought to himself. However, sneaking into the Scarlet Blaze Palace was undoubtedly a very dangerous move. Without full confidence, Chu-Mu would not do it. Otherwise, he would be trapped like a turtle in a jar. He hid under the Scarlet Blaze Mountain and waited for an opportunity. Unfortunately, he did not find a suitable opportunity. The Scarlet Blaze Palace's Palace Master, Scarlet Blaze Palace, was still guarding the place and was very alert. Once he sneaked in, he would most likely be discovered. Staring at Scarlet Flame Mountain, a crazy idea suddenly emerged in Chu-Mu's heart. collapse the entire Scarlet Blaze Mountain and destroy the Scarlet Blaze Palace. Once the idea popped up, it could not be stopped. Perhaps this method was very cruel. However, back then, the Heavenly Network had chased after Chu Mu. If not for Chu Mu's good luck, he would have been dead long ago. How could he have gotten to where he was today? With this idea, Chu Mu began to observe the Scarlet Blaze Mountain. The Scarlet Blaze Mountain was not a group of mountains. Instead, it was a huge mountain that towered above the ground. Chu Mu formed the Celestial Golden Sword and the Celestial Wind Sword in his hands and began to cut. The rocks of the Scarlet Blaze Mountain were very hard. However, under Chu Mu's two swords, they appeared to be very fragile and were easily cut. In order to avoid attracting attention, Chu Mu purposely restrained his own power. He even sealed the aura of his swords. Unless one was very close to Chu Mu, no one would be able to discover him. Starting from the foot of the Scarlet Blaze Mountain, there was no seal at all. When he dug in, Chu Mu also used soil to seal the entrance. He used his mental strength to control stones to block it. It looked very natural. Not long after, Chu Mu dug a few hundred meters into the Scarlet Blaze Mountain like a drill. It was as if he wanted to dig through the Scarlet Blaze Mountain. Of course, if he wanted to, he could do it. He just needed to spend more time. After a period of time, Chu Mu dug a few thousand meters deep. At this point, his aura would not be easily leaked out. Chu Mu could use more power. His two swords continued to attack. His swordplay was displayed and he kept cutting. His efficiency was more than 10 times faster than before. The furious Scarlet Blaze Palace Master Scarlet Dragon and the experts of the Scarlet Blaze Palace would never think of doing that. Just below the Scarlet Blaze Palace, at the very bottom of the Scarlet Blaze Mountain, a person was constantly digging, preparing to destroy the foundation of the Scarlet Blaze Palace. The base of the Scarlet Blaze Mountain was very, very long. A few thousand meters was just a negligible distance. Chu Mu kept going deeper. The first few thousand meters were only passageways with a diameter of 1 meter. After a few thousand meters, it became a passageway with a diameter of 3 meters. This allowed Chu Mu to dig in better. The All Heavens sword was a great emperor-level sword. Moreover, it was not something that an ordinary emperor-level sword could compare to. The All Heavens golden sword was incomparably sharp, and the All Heavens wind sword was shockingly sharp. With two swords in hand, Chu Mu constantly displayed the All Heavens sword style. Its power was overwhelming. Sword 3 was one sword after another. The sword light was concentrated and connected, converging into a river that surged forward endlessly. Under the sword light, the rocks at the bottom of the Scarlet Blaze Mountain were cut open like tofu. However, the deeper one went, the harder the rocks became. 10,000 meters, 20,000 meters, 30,000 meters. At this depth, Chu Mu's aura was completely sealed. This meant that he could unleash his power without restraint. Of course, it was best to condense his power instead of exploding it. After a distance of tens of thousands of meters, one could be considered to have truly entered the Scarlet Blaze Mountain. His goal was to dig through the Scarlet Blaze Mountain in a crisscross pattern. After that, he would set up layers of explosive seals and other means to detonate them in one fell swoop. Once the Scarlet Blaze Mountain's foundation was shaken, with the addition of other forces, it would be shaken and collapse. Thinking about it, once the Scarlet Blaze Mountain collapsed, the Scarlet Blaze Palace would be destroyed. Perhaps not everyone in the Scarlet Blaze Palace would be killed. However, the collapse of the Scarlet Blaze Mountain and the destruction of the Scarlet Blaze Palace would be a greater blow to the Scarlet Blaze Palace. Thinking of this, Chu Mu's heart was filled with motivation. He did not have a good impression of this sect that had once sent many great emperor-level experts to kill him. At this moment, he was like an industrious ant, digging tirelessly to dig through the Scarlet Blaze Mountain. Chapter 22:57. In the Scarlet Blaze Palace, the Palace Lord Scarlet Dragon was seated at the top. Below him were a group of great emperors. We didn't find anything, Scarlet Dragon said calmly. Under his calmness, there was a terrifying pressure. It was as if a volcano had erupted 10,000 years ago. In the depths of his eyes, there seemed to be magma-like flames burning. Wherever he looked, the great emperors lowered their heads, not daring to look him in the eyes. Even the Sword Emperor cloning sword did the same. This is the result of your hard work for half a month. Scarlet Dragon's calm voice sounded again. There was a pressure that seemed to be about to explode. Palace Lord, the culprit is too cunning. He might be a professional assassin. Sword Emperor cloning sword had to say something. He didn't leave any traces behind. Then the great emperors of the Scarlet Blaze Palace died for nothing? Scarlet Dragon asked. No one knew how to answer. Many great emperors had died, but they couldn't even catch the culprit's shadow. How could they bear it? They didn't know that the culprit was digging in the depths of the Scarlet Blaze Mountain. They wouldn't be able to come up with such a crazy idea unless they were crazy. After a few days, Chu Mu had already dug more than 100,000 meters. It was a shocking depth. The rocks were even harder and were accompanied by bursts of high temperature. As Chu Mu dug, he treated this method as training. Yes, training his sword. What angle to strike from? How much strength to strike with the sword? How to use less strength to produce more tyrannical power? How to make the power more condensed? How to use the external environment to make the sword strike faster? And so on. He struck out his sword frequently and tirelessly. His target was the rocks in the mountain. Chu Mu gradually forgot about everything else. He also forgot about his own goal. He just continued to attack with his sword. In his mind, there was only one thought, and that was to attack with even more precision. The word better encompassed many aspects: strength, speed, trajectory, etc. Chu Mu unceasingly stabbed with his sword, unceasingly digging. Suddenly, his two swords missed. Chu Mu's entire body charged forward. The terrifying heat instantly invaded his entire body, as if his entire body was being burned on fire. This instantly woke Chu Mu up. Where is this? Chu Mu immediately floated in the air and activated the truth-seeking technique. The great true wheel rotated and the power swept through every part of his body to resist the terrifying high temperature. His eyes were filled with shock and confusion. What entered his eyes was a sea of red. Below him was a sea of red like a lake. Chu Mu could see that this seemed to be formed by magma, but it looked very pure. Moreover, there seemed to be a layer of invisible flames covering the outermost surface, burning. Looking around, there were sealed mountain walls. This was a space inside the mountain. It seemed to be a man-made space inside the mountain. It was about a few thousand meters in area and about a dozen meters in height. The red liquid below was like a small lake. In the center of the lake, there was a huge rock protruding about 5 to 6 meters. The top of the rock was very flat. There was a person sitting cross-legged on it. It was an old man wearing a scarlet flame robe. His hair and beard were also scarlet. Waves of high temperature spread out from the red liquid below. It also spread out from the body of the old man who was sitting cross-legged. The old man did not have any reaction to Chu Mu's arrival. Chu Mu held his sword with both hands and activated the truth-seeking technique to the maximum. The shadow of the Great True will seem to appear behind his back. This was a sign that his strength was raised to the maximum. His face was full of vigilance as he stared at the fiery red old man, but he didn't receive any attacks. As he watched, Chu Mu discovered that the fiery red old man seemed to have died. Yes, he did not feel any vitality. Senior. Chu Mu tried to call out to the old man, but he did not receive any response. He called out a few more times, but there was still no response. Senior, Junior has offended you. After Chu Mu's voice fell, he waited for 3 breaths of time before nearing the fiery red elder. After circling around the old man, Chu Mu was finally sure that the old man was already dead. In other words, this was a corpse. It was just that it looked no different from a living person. a dead sovereign realm expert. Chu Mu thought to himself. He felt a burst of joy for no reason. He never thought that his wild idea of digging through the Scarlet Flame Mountain and destroying the foundation of the Scarlet Flame Palace would lead him to such a place at the very bottom of the Scarlet Flame Mountain. He would even find the corpse of a sovereign realm expert. It was obvious that this was a sovereign realm expert who cultivated the origin of fire. The red liquid below was very likely formed by the influence of this sovereign realm expert who had died over the years. Since it was a dead Dominator realm expert, Chu Mu didn't feel any danger. He began to carefully examine the Dominator realm expert's corpse, as well as the surrounding environment. Finally, he came to a conclusion. This Dominator realm expert had been dead for over 100,000 years. As for how many tens of thousands of years, Chu Mu wasn't sure. What relationship does this person have with the Scarlet Flame Palace? A thought popped up in his mind. This was the Scarlet Flame Mountain. This person cultivated the origin of fire. He had been dead for more than 100,000 years. The Scarlet Flame Palace had also existed for more than 100,000 years. It was inevitable that Chu Mu would have such a guess. This place is definitely an excellent cultivation ground for those who cultivate the great Tao of fire. Chu Mu thought. Soon after, his gaze locked onto the interspatial ring on the old man's finger. Using his sword, he skillfully picked up the interspatial ring and placed it in his hand. Since the old man was dead, the interspatial ring had become an ownerless item. Chu Mu easily dripped a drop of blood on it to recognize it as its owner. Fated person, I am the Scarlet Flame ancestor of the Scarlet Flame Palace. If you are a disciple of the Scarlet Flame Palace, you should bring everything of mine back to the Scarlet Flame Palace. If you are not a disciple of the Scarlet Flame Palace, you should also bring everything of mine back to the Scarlet Flame Palace. The Scarlet Flame Palace will give you a sufficient reward. An old but loud voice rang out, startling Chu Mu. Fortunately, this was only a consciousness left behind by the dead sovereign realm expert. Otherwise, if he was distracted, it would definitely bring a lot of trouble to Chu Mu. This consciousness also allowed Chu Mu to know that this old man was called Ancestor Scarlet Flame. He was the ancestor of the Scarlet Flame Palace. A dead ancestor of the Scarlet Flame Palace. Very good. Chu Mu's lips curled into a smile. As for the consciousness left behind by Ancestor Scarlet Flame, it was a complete joke for Chu Mu to bring everything of him back to the Scarlet Flame Palace. After checking, there were many good things in Ancestor Scarlet Flame's interspatial ring. After all, as a sovereign realm expert, he must be rich. There were dozens of origin source stones of fire and more than a dozen other origin source stones. There were also many elixirs, weapons, spiritual herbs, metal ores, and so on. There were also some martial arts manuals. I wonder if Ancestor Scarlet Flame's origin source of fire still exists. Chu Mu thought to himself and unhesitatingly drew his sword. The heavenly golden sword was extremely sharp and instantly pierced into Ancestor Scarlet Flame's head. With a flick of his wrist, the sword slashed horizontally and instantly cut open Ancestor Scarlet Flame's head. Following that, a ball of fiery red light flew out, emitting an extremely pure flame energy fluctuation. That was the origin source of fire. The origin source of fire seemed to have a mind of its own. As soon as it left Ancestor Scarlet Flame's head, it quickly flew down. The red liquid below seemed to be attractive to it. Chu Mu could not let it escape. His left hand grabbed at the void and power surged. Suddenly, the origin source of fire was captured and held in his hand. His palm seemed to be burned by flames. This was a complete piece of origin source of fire. Unfortunately, as time passed, the power contained in this complete origin source of fire was not as much as it was at its peak. There was only about half of it left. Even if it's only half, it's enough for me to raise my cultivation by a lot. Chu Mu thought to himself. In the past, he had only obtained a small portion of the origin source of fire. It was not even 1% of the complete origin source. it was incomparable to the current one. In that case, I will completely refine this piece of origin source of fire here and raise my cultivation further. Chu Mu thought to himself. An increase in cultivation meant an increase in strength. He would become more powerful, and with more powerful strength, he would be able to deal with more powerful enemies. Without any hesitation, Chu Mu pushed Ancestor Scarlet Flame's body away and sat on the boulder. He held the origin source of fire in his hand and operated the truth-seeking technique. He began to absorb the power of the origin source of fire into his spiritual world and used it to refine his all heavens sword way origin source. With the influx of the power of the origin source of fire, Chu Mu's refinement of the all heavens sword way origin source of fire improved little by little. At the same time, the part of the all heavens sword way origin source of fire also improved. This was beyond Chu Mu's expectations. The power of the origin source of fire circulated throughout his body, and at the same time, it was refining the all heavens sword. It could be said that the benefits brought to Chu Mu by the origin source of fire were in three aspects. Time passed little by little, and Chu Mu's cultivation improved at an astonishing speed. It was many times faster than his usual cultivation. In theory, any cultivator could refine the power of the origin source. However, there were fewer people below the Dominator realm who could do it. Moreover, it usually took a lot of time. There was no one like Chu Mu who could refine it so quickly. Even if there was a Dominator realm master helping to refine it, it would still be the same. After all, one was helped by others, while the other was refined by oneself. The efficiency was completely different. Chu Mu's original cultivation was at the level of a first step Great Emperor. Now he was rapidly charging towards the level of a first step Great Emperor. The efficiency of his improvement was even faster than when he was cultivating in the original universe. The cultivation in the original universe focused on comprehension. However, the current cultivation was directly refining the power of the origin source of fire to refine his own sword way origin source. In this way, he could strengthen the use of the all heavens sword way origin source of fire. Chapter 2258. The Scarlet Blaze Palace ordered all the experts in the Scarlet Blaze land to search for the culprit with great fanfare. They sealed off the Scarlet Blaze land, and anyone who entered or left the Scarlet Blaze land had to undergo strict checks. Under such circumstances, even a small mosquito couldn't enter or leave freely. Scarlet Dragon and the Scarlet Blaze Palace's experts were certain that the culprit hadn't left the Scarlet Blaze land yet. They were certain that the culprit was still hiding somewhere in the Scarlet Blaze land. That was why they couldn't find him. They had never imagined that the culprit they were looking for was at the bottom of the Scarlet Blaze Mountain. Moreover, the culprit had found the Scarlet Blaze Palace's old ancestor Scarlet Flame and seized his spatial ring and fire origin. At this time, Chu Mu was using old ancestor Scarlet Flame's fire origin to cultivate and improve his cultivation as much as possible. Old ancestor Scarlet Flame himself was a sovereign realm expert, and his fire origin was more complete than Chu Mu's sword origin. Therefore, using the fire origin to refine his sword origin to improve his cultivation was very effective. However, the fire origin didn't just refine Chu Mu's sword origin, it also supplemented and perfected the mysteries of fire contained in the sword origin. It also refined the All Heavens sword to improve the All Heavens fire sword. Therefore, its power was divided into three. Half a month passed, and a strong aura surged from Chu Mu's body. It was so sharp that it seemed like it could cut the Scarlet Blaze Mountain in half. Peak First Step Emperor Realm. Originally, Chu Mu's purpose of leaving the ancient Sword City to return to the Azure World was to settle the grudges of the past. During this period, he was also prepared that his cultivation wouldn't improve at all. After all, most of his time was spent on the road, and he didn't have enough time to cultivate. At most, he could maintain his cultivation without regressing. But now, out of his expectations, his cultivation had increased. Counting the days since he had left the ancient Sword City, it had only been slightly more than a year. In this short period of time, his cultivation had risen from high-level Emperor realm to peak Emperor realm. Who knew how many people would be dumbfounded by this kind of speed of improvement? If one were to calculate the total time, one would discover that from the time Chu Mu had broken through to the Emperor realm, from the beginning stage of the first step Emperor realm to the peak stage of the first step Emperor realm, the total time had not even exceeded 6 years. Even though he had made a breakthrough in his cultivation, he had only consumed a small portion of the power contained in the fire origin. There was still a large portion left. At the very least, I can break through to the limit of the first step martial monarch realm. I might even break through to the second step martial monarch realm. Chu Mu thought to himself. His eyes flickered with excitement. Before reaching the martial monarch realm, especially when he was a half-step martial monarch, he had spent a lot of time accumulating and building a solid and perfect foundation for himself. He almost didn't know how to make a breakthrough until he accidentally found the opportunity to make a breakthrough under the pressure of more than 10 martial monarchs. Now, in less than 6 years, his cultivation base had improved by leaps and bounds. His speed of improvement was much faster than when he was under the great Emperor realm. It could be said that he had been accumulating strength for a long time. The exceptional realm was a period of accumulation and building one's foundation, while the martial monarch realm was a period of growth. The deeper one's accumulation in the exceptional realm, the more solid one's foundation would be. As long as one could find the opportunity to make a breakthrough and successfully break through to the martial monarch realm, the speed of improvement in the martial monarch realm would be even faster. It wasn't impossible for it to be faster than when he was in the exceptional realm. It sounded strange. After all, the martial monarch realm was much stronger than the exceptional realm. The two were on two completely different levels. It was a joke to say that the speed of improvement in the martial monarch realm was faster than the exceptional realm, but sometimes it was the truth. After all, an incomparably solid foundation would bring about an extremely high difficulty in making a breakthrough. Hypothetically speaking, if Chu Mu hadn't wandered around for so many years, accumulating strength, and then being surrounded by more than 10 martial monarchs, he wouldn't have been able to find the opportunity to make a breakthrough. Without that kind of opportunity, Chu Mu didn't know how long it would take for him to make a breakthrough. It might be 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or even 100 years. It was possible. Since ancient times, there was no lack of outstanding talents who tried their best to build an incomparably solid foundation. Their path of breakthrough was more difficult and bumpy. There were even some who were stuck at the bottleneck of the limit of the half-step Great Emperor realm for hundreds of years before finding the opportunity to make a breakthrough. And such people, once they made a breakthrough to the martial monarch realm, their incomparably solid foundation would erupt with shocking power, causing their cultivation to improve by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. It took hundreds of years to break through the bottleneck of the limit of the half-step Great Emperor realm and reach the martial monarch realm. However, it only took a few decades to go from the initial stage of the first stage Great Emperor realm to the limit of the third stage Great Emperor realm. Chu Mu's speed of improvement was even faster. Not only did he have an incomparably solid foundation, but he also had fortuitous encounters that ordinary people didn't have. Comprehension of the primal universe, coincidentally entering the state of matching the primal universe, the complete origin of the Dominator realm, and coincidentally he could refine the origin very well. Under the combination of all these factors, Chu Mu's cultivation had increased so quickly. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. Chu Mu's body once again erupted with a tyrannical aura, even more tyrannical than before. Limit of the first stage Great Emperor realm. At this time, there was still more than half of the power contained in the fire origin. Chu Mu couldn't help but feel a fire burning in his heart. With more than half of the fire origin's power, there was a chance for him to make a breakthrough to the initial stage of the second stage Great Emperor realm. Initial stage of the second stage Great Emperor realm. This was Chu Mu's current goal. His cultivation base was to break through the limit of the first stage Great Emperor Realm. Chu Mu continued to refine the fire origin, and a blazing aura spread out from his body. It was like an invisible wave, cleansing the air continuously. The red viscous liquid below seemed to be affected as well. Bubbles appeared one after another, and then they burst open. An astonishingly high temperature spread out and rushed upwards, causing the temperature in the belly of the mountain to rise by a lot. Not to mention refined steel. Even some metals with high melting points would be melted into molten iron in a few breaths of time under such high temperature. The bubbles below grew bigger and bigger. There was even a 1-meter wide bubble that popped open with a pop. A terrifyingly high temperature swept out like boiling water, wanting to cook Chu Mu. However, Chu Mu, who had refined the fire origin, his body temperature was only high and not low. He was not affected at all. The great true wheel rotated at an astonishing speed, releasing waves of tyrannical power. The power was like surging waves, but also like lightning. It appeared from the deepest part of Chu Mu's body, and it ran through every part of his body. This kind of power was the perfect combination of spiritual force, physical force, and origin force. The sword origin at the center of his spiritual world was rotating faster than usual. Chu Mu's sword origin wasn't completely under his control. When he was in the initial stage of the first stage Great Emperor Realm, he could freely use 1,000th of the sword origin's power. When he was in the middle stage of the first stage Great Emperor Realm, he could freely use 3,000th of the sword origin's power, and so on. When he reached the limit of the first stage Great Emperor Realm, he could freely use 9,000th of the sword origin's power. Once he could freely use 100th of the sword origin's power, it meant that he had stepped into the initial stage of the second stage Great Emperor Realm. As for the initial stage of the third stage Great Emperor Realm, he could freely use 1/10th of the sword origin's power. 90/10th of the sword origin's power was the limit of the Great Emperor Realm. If he broke through again, he would be able to freely use the sword origin's power. At that time, he would step into the Sovereign Realm, and it would be a whole new world. The Sovereign Realm was still too far away from Chu Mu. After all, even if he raised his cultivation to the limit of the third stage Great Emperor Realm, it wouldn't be easy for him to break through to the Sovereign Realm. The most important thing right now was to raise his cultivation, under the condition that it wouldn't affect his foundation. The higher the better. Refining, Chu Mu wholeheartedly refined the remaining fire origin's power. Even though there would inevitably be some losses during the refining process, the benefits were greater. His strength at the limit of the first stage Great Emperor Realm also rose bit by bit, moving towards the limit. The Great Emperor Realm belonged to the growth stage, but it didn't mean that one could advance without any worries. One also needed to accumulate enough strength. Otherwise, it might shake one's foundation. Why would those who rushed to break through to the Great Emperor Realm be stuck in the Great Emperor Realm for many years? It was because their foundation wasn't solid enough. Therefore, after breaking through to the Great Emperor Realm, they would need to spend a long time to consolidate their foundation before they could advance further. The difficulty of establishing a foundation in the exceptional realm was much lower. The difficulty of establishing a foundation in the Great Emperor Realm was naturally much higher. Establishing a foundation in the exceptional realm might take 100 years, but in the Great Emperor Realm, it would take a few hundred years or more. This was also the reason why many geniuses were willing to spend more time in the exceptional realm to establish their foundation. They would only look for an opportunity to break through when they couldn't do so anymore. When Chu Mu was in the exceptional realm, his foundation was incomparably solid. It could be said that it was perfect. However, his cultivation was increasing rapidly now. Therefore, if he wanted to break through to the second stage Great Emperor Realm, he would need to further strengthen his foundation. One's foundation wasn't fixed. Every realm had its limits. Of course, when Chu Mu was in the exceptional realm, his foundation was much more solid than many first-stage great emperors. There was no doubt about it. Chu Mu spent a total of 3 months to completely stabilize his cultivation. His foundation of the first stage, Great Emperor Realm, had also reached its limit. It couldn't be improved any further. Next, it's time to break through to the second stage, Great Emperor Realm. Chu Mu's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. Soon after, he sped up the circulation of the truth-seeking technique. The great truth will spun at an even faster speed. A faint shadow loomed behind him. Chapter 2259. A scorching aura filled the air and rippled in all directions. Invisible flames burned on the surface of Chu Mu's body, turning the surroundings into a vacuum. The last bit of energy contained in the fire origin was drawn out and split into 3. The 3 strands of energy rushed into Chu Mu's body. Chu Mu's body trembled and his tyrannical aura shrunk. Then it expanded and exploded. Terrifying rumbling sounds continued and shocking sharpness cut in all directions. At the same time, the grand true wheel behind Chu Mu's back trembled for a moment and started to fluctuate as if it was about to collapse. In the next breath, the grand true wheel trembled and started to rotate again. The speed of rotation wasn't as fast as before, but it emitted rumbling sounds. It was as if the wheels of history were rolling, pushing time forward and crushing everything. Below, the red, magma-like liquid started to vibrate and soared into the sky. It directly hit the ceiling of the cave and exploded. It turned into countless thumb-sized droplets that rained down like a storm. However, before Chu Mu's body, the droplets melted into nothingness and couldn't affect Chu Mu in the slightest. The Grand True Wheel slowly rotated as if it was dragging the long river of time and space. The rumbling sounds became louder and louder, and the Grand True Wheel's shadow became clearer and clearer. In the end, the Grand True Wheel behind Chu Mu's back changed from the original 36 corners to 48 corners. It looked like it was real and illusory at the same time. It was in between the two and exuded a unique and tyrannical aura. On Chu Mu's body, a sharp aura resonated with the Grand True Wheel behind him. The tyrannical aura of a low-level, second-step emperor spread out and suppressed all directions. The boiling magma below quickly calmed down. The strength of a low-level second-step emperor is indeed much stronger than a peak first-step emperor. Chu Mu muttered to himself. His body's energy also calmed down, and the Grand True Wheel behind him disappeared. This piece of fire origin, which still had more than half of its energy, allowed Chu Mu's cultivation to break through from high first-step emperor realm to low second-step emperor realm. However, he was only at the beginning of second-step emperor realm. He still needed a period of time to consolidate his cultivation. According to the increase in strength, a low-level second-step emperor realm cultivator should be comparable to a low-level third-step emperor realm cultivator. However, Chu Mu still needed to consolidate his cultivation before improving his other aspects. When one's cultivation base had just broken through a major realm, it was in an unstable state. This instability not only meant that one's cultivation base might drop again, but it also meant that one could rapidly improve in all aspects in a short period of time. Taking revenge on the Crimson Blaze Palace wasn't as important as consolidating his own cultivation base and improving his comprehension of the various mysteries. The entire Crimson Flame territory was still searching for the so-called murderer, but the murderer had continuously broken through in the Crimson Flame Mountain. Now he was consolidating his cultivation. He was doing 2 things at once, consolidating and comprehending at the same time. This cultivation lasted for another year before it ended. My cultivation base has finally stabilized. Chu Mu muttered to himself. He felt that everything around him seemed to have changed, and it was much clearer. Then, Chu Mu's right hand made a grabbing motion in the air. His strength surged and flames spat out. A sharp light shot out and condensed into a fiery red longsword. Fire Sword of the Heavens. His left hand made a grabbing motion as well. Golden light and sharp light gathered and condensed into a long and narrow golden sword. It was the fire sword of the heavens. Chu Mu looked at the fire sword of the heavens, and then looked at the fire sword of the heavens. He could clearly feel the difference between the two. That kind of difference was the difference between the two. Just like great emperors, great emperor-level swords were also divided into different grades. Naturally, they were divided into extreme grade, upper, middle, and lower grade. Previously, Chu Mu had merged the fire sword of the heavens, Sword Dao, with the fire sword of the heavens to forge the fire sword of the heavens. Overall, all the fire sword of the heavens was at grade 1. Of course, because the fire sword of the heavens did not contain a grand Dao, but a higher level origin energy, each of the fire sword of the heavens was comparable to a mid-grade emperor grade sword. But now, from the energy fluctuations exuded by the fire sword of the heavens, Chu Mu knew that the fire sword of the heavens had advanced to a mid-grade emperor grade sword. Its power was comparable to a high-grade emperor grade sword. The reason why the fire sword of the heavens could advance to a mid-grade emperor grade was closely related to the fire origin energy. When the fire origin energy was refined, its power was divided into 3 parts, and 1 part was obtained by the fire sword of the heavens. Good. The mid-grade fire sword of the heavens is even more powerful. If I go all out, I might be able to suppress a low-level 3rd step Emperor Realm expert. Chu Mu thought to himself. He glanced around and took out 12 origin stones with a thought. Among them, 2 were origin stones, 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 and the last 2 were origin stones of earth. What a pity! Looking at the 12 origin stones, Chu Mu muttered to himself. His hands moved rapidly, and one by one, Chu Mu poured his energy into the origin stones and threw them out in all directions, forming 2 interconnected array formations. On the path of formations, Chu Mu didn't intentionally spend time to comprehend them, but he had more or less accumulated experience. If he were to create a profound formation, he wouldn't be able to do it. However, he could create a few formations with decent strength. Currently, Chu Mu was arranging 2 array formations. One was called the 5 elements array formation, and the other was called the 5 elements array formation. These 2 array formations were relatively common array formations that could be arranged by those who had a certain level of attainment in array formations. Whether it was the 5 elements array formation or the 5 elements array formation, both used an origin stone as the core. Then the 2 5 elements array formations formed a positive and negative yin-yang array formation. Array within array. This was a relatively delicate method of arranging array formations. It not only required a certain level of attainment in array formations, but also a certain level of talent. Chu Mu's purpose of arranging the array formation with the 12 origin stones was naturally to make it explode and destroy the foundation of the Red Flame Mountain. After sitting down and making various preparations, Chu Mu poured his energy into each origin stone again. After doing all this, his body flashed, and at an even faster speed, he went straight ahead to the tunnel that he had dug. It took a lot of time to come, but it took him a lot of time to leave. As there was no need to dig, the journey was smooth and unimpeded. In just a short while, Chu Mu rushed out of the tunnel. He displayed his maximum speed. The moment he rushed out of the mountain, he displayed the 3rd level of the closed proximity world body, and after a breath's time, he displayed the 2nd level of the closed proximity world body, and in an instant he was far away. The burst of speed caused Chu Mu's aura to leak out. In an instant, the experts of the Red Flame Palace sensed it. This unfamiliar aura was somewhat familiar, and it was very similar to the aura left behind by the murderer. If it was not the murderer himself, then it was related to the murder. In an instant, even the palace master of the Red Flame Palace, Qilong, left the Red Flame Palace in an instant to chase after Jian Wushuang. However, they were a little too slow. It was not that easy to catch up with Chu Mu. Moreover, Chu Mu's arrangement had already begun to take effect. Terrifying auras locked onto Chu from afar. With Qi Long as the leader, the great emperors of the Red Flame Palace chased after him closely. They would not give up until they killed Chu. Suddenly there was a loud roar, as if a huge hammer had slammed into their hearts, causing them to feel suffocated for a moment. Their faces changed, and they subconsciously looked in the direction of the Red Flame Mountain. As soon as they saw it, all of them turned pale with fright, as if their souls had left their bodies. They did not know why the Red Flame Mountain was shaking. The shaking became more and more obvious, and in less than 10 breaths of time, a crack appeared on the Red Flame Mountain in the eyes of the experts of the Red Flame Palace. The crack started from the bottom of the Red Flame Mountain, and it shot up like lightning, as if it was going to tear the Red Flame Mountain apart. Attack! Stabilize the Red Flame Mountain. Qi Long finally came to his senses. He immediately roared, and the energy in his body surged. If they did not stabilize the Scarlet Fire Mountain, it might collapse. Once the Scarlet Fire Mountain collapsed, the Scarlet Fire Palace would be destroyed as well. Even if they survived, at least half of the disciples of the Scarlet Fire Palace would die. Most importantly, if the Scarlet Fire Palace was destroyed, it would feel like it existed in name only. Even if it was rebuilt in the future, its prestige would be severely affected. Moreover, in the entire Red Flame territory, the Red Flame Mountain was the most suitable place for the Red Flame Palace. Regardless of the reason, the Red Flame Mountain had to be stabilized. The great emperors of the Red Flame Palace unleashed their energy recklessly and appeared around the Red Flame Mountain. Their energy combined and supported the Red Flame Mountain, stabilizing it. At the same time, many figures appeared from the Red Flame Palace and fled outside. Scarlet Fire Mountain continued to shake. Scarlet Dragon and the rest of the Scarlet Fire Palace's experts all looked terrible because they could clearly feel the shaking coming from Scarlet Fire Mountain. The shaking made their blood boil. In less than 3 breaths of time, those one-step great emperors spat out blood. Their faces were pale, and they looked dispirited. After another 10 breaths of time, those second-step great emperors also spat out blood. On the Scarlet Flame Mountain, cracks appeared one after another. The cracking sounds caused their hearts to stop beating. They were extremely terrified. In the distance, countless people of the Red Flame territory stared at the Red Flame Mountain in fear. They did not know what was going on, and why the Red Flame Mountain was shaking and cracking. The Red Flame Mountain had existed for millions of years, and it had never been shaken. It was incomparably stable. It was a symbol, and a belief. It was also a yearning of the cultivators of the Red Flame territory. But now, this yearning was shaken, and this meaning was about to be shattered. Chapter 2260. Loud rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, and waves of air currents surged out, one after another. They were endless and boundless, like tidal waves crashing out recklessly. In an instant, they covered a radius of several tens of thousands of meters and spread out even further. Every ripple was as heavy as a mountain. Some of the Scarlet Blaze Palace's disciples who couldn't fly out in time were swept by the ripples. Their bodies suddenly stopped in the void and trembled violently. As their bones trembled, crackling sounds like beans being fried could be heard. Every inch of their bones cracked and blood flowed out from their 7 orifices. The ripples continued to spread, spreading even further. The miserable state of the Scarlet Blaze Palace's disciples frightened the others, and they quickly retreated. Crack! Crack! Every ripple was so clear, resounding through the heavens and earth. Every ripple was so despairing. At this time around the Scarlet Blaze Mountain, it wasn't only the Scarlet Blaze Palace's Great Emperor Realm experts who were attacking. The other Great Emperor Realm experts in the Scarlet Blaze territory also took action, using their own strength to stabilize the Scarlet Blaze Mountain. However, more and more cracks appeared on the Scarlet Blaze Mountain. The collapse was close at hand. Even if the Great Emperor Realm experts used all of their strength, they could only delay it for a while. Chu Mu looked back as he maintained his high speed and flew out of the Scarlet Blaze territory. His goal had been achieved. Even if the Scarlet Blaze Mountain didn't collapse in the end, the loss to the Scarlet Blaze Palace was incalculable. For a long time after this, the Scarlet Blaze Palace would be unable to recover from this setback. It would be impossible for them to recover to their current peak without tens of thousands of years. This kind of revenge was enough. As this thought arose, Chu Mu's mind became clear, and he felt much more comfortable. Soon, Chu Mu left the Scarlet Blaze territory and flew towards the Scarlet Blaze territory. Since he had achieved his goal and gained a lot, it was time to leave. What Chu Mu didn't know was that just as he was about to leave the Scarlet Blaze territory, Ancestor Qi Yan happened to return. When he saw the Scarlet Blaze Mountain about to collapse, he immediately took action. Ancestor Qi Yan was a minor sovereign realm expert. When he attacked with his full strength, his power was much stronger than those great Emperor realm experts combined. With his strength, the Scarlet Blaze Mountain stopped collapsing. However, it only stopped collapsing. I will stabilize Scarlet Flame Mountain. You guys repair it. Ancestor Scarlet Flame's voice resounded throughout the world. Crimson Dragon and the other experts quickly gathered their strength and took out elixirs. Some were used to recover their strength, and some were used to treat their injuries. They quickly recovered their strength and injuries. Then, they started to repair Crimson Flame Mountain again. This would be a long process, but it had nothing to do with Chu Mu. Riding on the matchless ship, Chu Mu rushed towards the nearest space-time gate while taking out origin stones to refine the All-Heaven swords. This was a new discovery after refining the Fire Origin. By using the corresponding origin stone to temper the corresponding All-Heaven sword, one could slowly increase the power of the All-Heaven sword and eventually raise its grade. However, if he wanted to raise the level of all heavenly swords, it would undoubtedly be very difficult. He would need to consume many source stones. This meant that Chu Mu had to work even harder to obtain source stones. Moreover, he couldn't limit himself to one or a few types. The more types, the better. Setting off from the Scarlet Domain to the nearest space-time gate, with the matchless ship speed, it would take about half a year. In this half a year, Chu Mu drove the matchless ship while using origin stones to temper the All-Heaven swords. At the same time, he comprehended the All-Heavens swords to further perfect his sword Dao. As the All-Heavens swords were tempered, the All-Heavens sword Spirit Lil, Tian's spirituality, also increased bit by bit. Everything was developing in a better direction. Half a year later, Chu Mu arrived at the space-time gate. He kept the matchless ship and used the space-time gate to continuously teleport him towards Immemorial Sword City. If he did not have the space-time gate, he did not know how long it would take him to return to Immemorial Sword City. However, with the space-time gate, Chu Mu arrived outside Immemorial Sword City in just a few days. Returning to the matchless palace in Immemorial Sword City, Xue Yinling still had not returned. However, before she left, she had said that she would stay in the Snow Clan for a long time. It seemed that after breaking through to the Emperor realm, she would go into seclusion for a period of time. Perhaps after she came out of seclusion, her cultivation would improve greatly and not be limited to the first step Emperor realm. Xue Yinling's foundation had been forged to the point where it could not be improved. Once she broke through, her potential would be amazing. With the Snow Clan's foundation, it would not be difficult to improve. Therefore, Chu Mu was not worried about Xue Yinling at all. Although he missed her, it was all for the sake of the future. They could spend more time together. A short separation was inevitable. Chu Mu did not stay in the Matchless Palace for long. He set off again. This time, he was heading towards the Chu sect. Junior brother Mu, your cultivation. When Chu Huangji saw Chu Mu, he was pleasantly surprised. Then his eyes widened and he looked like he was in a daze. There was no way around it. He was too surprised. He was completely stunned. Thinking about it, how long had Chu Mu been in the Prodigy Battalion? 20 years? His cultivation had already reached the Emperor realm. This speed of improvement was indescribable. Moreover, he was not even a first-step Emperor realm expert. He had actually reached the second-step Emperor realm. A feeling of shame emerged from the depths of his heart. Anyone who faced a monster like Chu Mu would feel this way. Then, Chu Huangji felt happy because Chu Mu was the senior brother of the Chu sect. The more powerful he was, the more powerful the Chu sect would be. As for the process of his cultivation increasing, Chu Mu only used very short words to describe it and didn't explain in detail. Senior brother Huangji, my cultivation has reached the second step Emperor realm, but my strength has surpassed it by a lot. However, I feel that I can continue to improve quickly, but I need a good place to do so. Chu Mu continued, You're more knowledgeable and experienced. Do you know a place that's more suitable for me? Junior brother Mu is walking the path of using battle to cultivate battle, right? Chu Huangji said, I have a good place to recommend, but it is very dangerous. The slightest mistake can lead to death. Senior brother Huangji, please speak. Chu Mu said, he did not care about danger because it was normal. If he wanted to improve himself without experiencing danger, how could there be such a good thing in the world? Even if there was, Chu Mu was not willing to accept it. If he did not experience danger to improve himself, no matter how strong he was, it was like a castle in the air. If he had the corresponding strength, he also needed the corresponding application and battle experience. Otherwise, it would be a shortcoming and would become a flaw. There are two such places. One is between the origin world and the absolute beginning divine world, and the other is between the origin world and the primal beginning demon world. Chu Huangji said seriously, one of these two places is called the primordial spirit battlefield, and the other is called the primordial demon battlefield. Primordial spirit battlefield. Primordial demon battlefield. Chu Mu muttered and repeated. The name sounded simple and straightforward. One would know what it was. The primordial spirit battlefield was the battlefield between the origin world and the absolute beginning divine world. The primordial demon battlefield was the battlefield between the origin world and the primal beginning demon world. 1,000,000 years ago, the absolute beginning divine world and the primal beginning demon world sent an army to invade the origin world and were eventually repelled. However, the strongholds they established outside the origin world still existed, and only a part of them was destroyed. In order to better defend against the invasion of the absolute beginning divine world and the primal beginning demon world, the various clans of the origin world joined forces and set up a heavy defense line at the strongholds of the divine clan and the demon clan as the front line. The purpose was to monitor the movements of the absolute beginning divine world and the primal beginning demon world, and to know the movements of their armies earlier. The second purpose was to act as a frontline battlefield. Once the war started, they could first defend against the attacks of the two clans and buy enough time for the origin world to calmly set up and not panic. In the past 1,000,000 years, the absolute beginning divine world and the primal beginning demon world did not launch any more attacks. The front line and the strongholds collided and merged bit by bit, becoming two battlefields. In these two battlefields, the divine clan of the absolute beginning divine world and the various clans of the origin world would constantly collide and fight. Similarly, on the primordial demon battlefield, the demon clan and the various clans of the origin world would constantly collide and fight. After hundreds of thousands of years, many treasures were naturally born on the battlefields, as well as many inheritances left behind after the fall of many experts. These changes made the two battlefields not only a place to fight with the experts of the divine clan and the demon clan, but also a place to adventure and search for treasures. However, there was a prerequisite to go to the two battlefields, and that was to have the cultivation of the Great Emperor Realm. Without the Great Emperor Realm, going to the two battlefields was no different from suicide. After listening to Chu Huangji's introduction, Chu Mu felt that the two battlefields were the best places to go. Thinking about it, there should be no other place more suitable for him. Chu Mu made a prompt decision to go to one of the two battlefields. Junior brother Mu, if you want to go to the two battlefields, you can first go to the ancient sword city to accept missions. You can also earn clan points while gaining experience. Chu Huangji reminded him. Okay. Chu Mu's eyes lit up. While accepting missions, he could also use clan points to exchange for things that were useful to him. By the way, senior brother Huangji, is this thing useful to the Chu sect? After saying that, Chu Mu took out the space-time gate from the massacre world. The space-time gate of the massacre world can be connected to the massacre world. Chu Huangji recognized it with a few glances and was immediately shocked. Yes, it is useful. Set it in our Chu sect, and our Chu sect's brothers can enter the massacre world at any time. Chu Huangji said happily. The massacre world was also a very good place to gain experience, especially for those below the Great Emperor realm. Currently, there were not many Great Emperor realm experts in the Chu sect, but there were many below the Great Emperor realm. The more places there were to gain experience, the more useful it was to a force. In that case, I thank Junior Brother Mu on behalf of the Chu sect's brothers. Chu Huangji said, I am a member of the Chu sect, so I naturally have to contribute to Chu Mu's growth. Chu Mu said seriously. After the two chatted for a while, Chu Mu left the Chu sect and returned to the ancient sword city. Chapter 2261. Chu Mu fell into deep thought as he scanned through the list of clan points. In terms of trump cards, Huang Xiaolong had 3 pieces of third step Great Emperor realm sword Dao Snow Jades, and his strength had already reached the third step Great Emperor realm. Therefore, exchanging for another third step Great Emperor realm trump card wouldn't be of much use, but it would cost him several tens of thousands of clan points. As for sovereign realm trump cards, his clan points were not enough. The 6th place in the Great Alliance tournament was rewarded with 50,000 clan points, and the 1st place on the Heaven's Pride list was rewarded with another 10,000 clan points. Adding the points from before, he had a total of 60,000 clan points. Cultivating in the ancient sword palace had consumed 10,000 clan points, leaving him with a little over 50,000 clan points. My strength is comparable to an ordinary third step Emperor realm expert, and with the 3 pieces of sword Dao Snow Jade, there shouldn't be many Emperor realm experts who can defeat me. Chu Mu thought to himself. Right now, Huang Xiaolong's attack power was comparable to a low-level third step Emperor realm, and his speed was slightly faster than the average low-level third step Emperor realm. Similarly, his defense was stronger than the average low-level third step Emperor realm expert. In terms of overall strength, Huang Xiaolong was slightly stronger than the average low-level third step Emperor realm expert. With this kind of strength, even if Huang Xiaolong encountered a mid-level third step Emperor realm expert, he would still be able to put up a fight. As for medicinal pellets, he already had a lot of them from the spoils of war, and there was no need to exchange for them. Not to mention, Chu Mu's self-healing ability was amazing. He also had a lot of ores and metals, and in the future, he would definitely get a lot of them. There was no need to exchange for them. In the end, Chu Mu realized that there was no need for him to exchange for anything. He didn't need anything that could be exchanged for, and he couldn't exchange for anything better. Why don't I go to the Burial Sword Abyss to cultivate and improve the ancient sword seal? Chu Mu thought to himself. After accepting the mission, he quickly headed to the Burial Sword Abyss. To do a good job, one must first sharpen the tools. The ancient sword seal was a sword Dao secret art that seemed simple, but in fact it was extremely profound. It was suitable for all realms, and it could even increase the strength of sovereign realm experts. As of now, Chu Mu's primordial sword seal was only at the 4th level. He planned to spend some time to cultivate the primordial sword seal to a higher level. As for the heavenly sword talisman script, he had already left it to his younger brother, King Chu, along with many other secret runes. After Chu Mu paid over 100 clan points, he entered the depths of the Burial Sword Abyss. With his current cultivation and strength, his endurance had greatly increased. The deeper he went into the Burial Sword Abyss, the more berserk the sword chi would be, and and the more beneficial it would be for the cultivation of the immemorial sword seal. The premise was that he could endure it. In just half a month, Chu Mu had reached the 5th level of the immemorial sword seal. He continued to cultivate and spent a month to reach the 6th level of the immemorial sword seal. The 6th level of the immemorial sword seal was enough to increase his sharpness by 60%. Thinking about it, Chu Mu still had time. He continued to cultivate, and when the time was up, his immemorial sword seal was not as good as the 7th level. The 7th level of the immemorial sword seal could increase the sharpness by 70%. Using the immemorial sword seal to increase the sharpness by 70%, my strength will definitely be more tyrannical. Chu Mu thought to himself. Leaving the burial sword abyss wasn't because he didn't want to continue cultivating, but because the 8th level of the immemorial sword seal required at least half a year of time. Unless his cultivation increased a step further and his endurance increased, he would be able to enter deeper into the burial sword abyss and shorten his cultivation time. He quickly left the immemorial sword city and headed to the battlefield. Of the 2 battlefields, Chu Mu chose the primordial spirit battlefield because the people of the God clan also cultivated sword skills. The primordial spirit battlefield was located between the origin world and the absolute beginning divine world. It was quite a distance away from the origin world. Chu Mu's first step was to leave the origin world and head to the border of the origin world. The immemorial sword city was very far away from the border of the origin world. Even though he used the space-time gate to teleport time and time again, it still took Chu Mu more than half a month to arrive. Chu Mu stood on the platform of a human clan space-time gate. Looking back, he saw countless stars twinkling. Those were the lights emitted by the realms and worlds of the origin world. They were as bright as the stars. Looking ahead, it was dark and deep with stars twinkling. It was like a bottomless abyss. It made people yearn for it and respect it. It was the center of the 3 main worlds, the chaotic void. It was Chu Mu's first time here. Looking at the darkness in front of him, an inexplicable emotion surged in his chest. He was not sure what he was feeling. It was vast, deep, and magnificent. It was unparalleled. Friend, are you planning to head to the primordial spirit battlefield? Chu Mu looked at the darkness in front of him. While his chest was surging, a hearty voice came from behind him. Yes. Chu Mu looked back and replied at the same time. It was a short-haired young man. He had a well-defined face and a slender figure. The aura he exuded was at the mid-level of the 2nd step Great Emperor Realm. Anyone who came to this space-time gate was going to the primordial spirit battlefield. As for the primordial demon battlefield, they would appear at another space-time gate. I'm Qin Shuiwa. How should I address you? The young man asked. Chu Mu. Chu Mu reported his name. Chu Mu, this name sounds familiar. Qin Shuiwa thought for a moment and said, if it weren't for your early 2nd step Great Emperor Realm cultivation, I would have associated you with that peerless genius from the ancient Sword City. Chu Mu's name had long resounded throughout the heavens. Many people in the origin realm knew of him. However, this name wasn't the only one. There were many people with the same name. However, in a short 20 years, unless they saw it with their own eyes, no one would believe that Chu Mu's cultivation had risen from the half-step emperor level to the initial stage of the 2nd step emperor level. Therefore, when Qin Shuiwa heard the name Chu Mu, his first impression was that peerless genius from the ancient Sword City. However, he felt that the person in front of him was definitely not that peerless genius. After all, the difference in cultivation was too big. Hearing Qin Shuiwa's words, Chu Mu did not refute. There was no need to. Brother Chu, is this your first time going to the primordial spirit battlefield? Qin Shuiwa did not dwell on the name Chu Mu. Yes, what about Brother Qin? Chu Mu asked. If Qin Shuiwa had been to the primordial spirit battlefield before, he would be able to understand more about the situation there. Me? I've been there once. Qin Shuiwa smiled and said, but the first time I went there, my cultivation was only at the first step, Great Emperor Realm. This is my second time going there. Other than Chu Mu and Qin Shuriwa, there were other people arriving one after another. More and more Emperor Realm experts appeared on the Space-Time Gates platform. Not only were there Emperor Realm experts, but there were also Sovereign Realm experts. It was just that there were fewer of them. We need to wait for the Flash Space Divine Boat. Only by taking the Flash Space Divine Boat can we reach the Primordial Spirit battlefield faster. Qin Shuriwa said to Chumu. The Primordial Spirit battlefield was very far away from the Space-Time Gate. With the speed of an Emperor Realm expert, they might not be able to reach the Primordial Spirit battlefield even after flying for several thousand years. No one would spend several thousand years rushing to the Primordial Spirit battlefield just for one experience. Fortunately, in order to allow people to enter the Primordial Spirit battlefield faster and kill the God race, the Origin World had a corresponding method, and that was the Flash Space Divine Boat. The Flash Space Divine Boat was a higher-grade flying boat than the Domain Crossing flying boat. It was often used to carry an army across the Chaos Void to attack other Origin worlds. For example, when the God Race and Devil Race's armies invaded the Origin World, they used many Flash Space Divine Boats. Every time the Flash Space Divine Boat was used, it consumed a large amount of energy, and its value was incomparably precious. As Chumu and Qin Shuriwa chatted, they gradually learned more about the situation of the Primordial Spirit battlefield. Although Qin Shuriwa had been there once, it was just a trip, so she didn't know much about it. Their conversation attracted the attention of several other Emperor Realm experts. All of them were Emperor Realm experts who were going to the Primordial Spirit battlefield for the first time, and they gathered around to listen. As for the others, they had either been there before or were led by their elders. Friends, this is my first time going to the Primordial Spirit battlefield, so I don't know much about it. Can I listen? A high-level Emperor Realm expert walked over and asked politely, "Do as you wish." Qin Shuriwa didn't refuse. A bunch of rookies go back obediently. Otherwise, when you reach the Primordial Spirit battlefield, you'll only increase the God Race's contribution points. A sarcastic voice was heard. Everyone looked over and saw a group of people gathered a few dozen meters away. There were 7 of them. 2 of them were third-step Great Sovereigns, while the rest were second-step Great Sovereigns. The one who spoke was a second-step Great Sovereign. He looked like a young man, but no one knew his actual age. Every time there are a lot of ignorant people who go to the Primordial Spirit battlefield and increase the God Race's contribution points. Do they really think that the Primordial Spirit battlefield is a place to play? Another second-step Emperor Realm expert chimed in. Qin Shuriwa stared at the 2 people who spoke, and a trace of coldness flashed in the depths of her eyes. She didn't respond, and Chumu merely glanced at them. He didn't say anything because there was no need to. Right at this time, a black flying boat that looked like a giant sword appeared silently. Its speed was indescribably fast. In the blink of an eye, the black flying boat arrived at the edge of the space-time gate. It was less than 1,000 meters away. This flying boat looked like it was 1,000 meters long and several dozen meters tall and wide. It didn't look too different from other flying boats. The Flash Space Divine Boat is here. Qin Shuriwa said, "Don't underestimate the Flash Space Divine Boat because it doesn't look very big. Its interior contains the profoundness of space, and it can accommodate 1,000,000 people at the same time." Hearing Qin Shuriwa's words, those who didn't know were shocked. The Flash Space Divine Boat was only 1,000 meters long, but its interior could accommodate 1,000,000 people. It was indeed shocking, but thinking about it, the Flash Space Divine Boat was extremely difficult to build. Without the profoundness of space, how could it transport an army? The Flash Space Divine Boat's door opened, allowing everyone to enter. However, someone flew out first and stood beside the door. There was a fee to ride the Flash Space Divine, boat to the primordial spirit battlefield. Chapter 2262. The price to ride the Flash Space Divine Boat was 100 clan merit points, which was universal. Once a cultivator broke through to the Great Emperor realm, they would be able to earn clan merit points regardless of whether they joined the Sword Union or not. 100 clan merit points was quite a lot. Many great emperors would go bankrupt if they took it out, but they had no choice but to do so in order to enter the primordial spirit battlefield. As long as they entered the primordial spirit battlefield, they might be able to gain more than 100 clan merit points. After all, in the process of accepting missions to kill the divine race, they would be able to obtain corresponding clan merit points as rewards. Simply put, 100 clan merit points was equivalent to an early investment. 100 clan merit points was a lot, but after entering the Flash Space Divine Boat, the treatment was quite good. Everyone was given a secret cultivation room, which was very large and well equipped. However, the yuan qi of heaven and earth was ordinary, but the fluctuations of various great Tao were very clear. It was just that it seemed a little chaotic, which made it difficult to comprehend. Hundreds of great emperors entered the Flash Space Divine Boat. The door closed and the Flash Space Divine Boat was activated. It changed direction and flew into the void of the chaotic universe. In just a few breaths, the Flash Space Divine Boat's speed became faster and faster, from 1,000 meters per breath to 10,000 meters per breath, and then to 100,000 meters per breath. Immediately, a burst of light covered the entire Flash Space Divine Boat. In a flash, the Flash Space Divine Boat disappeared as if it had entered a space-time tunnel. In just a few breaths, the Flash Space Divine Boat appeared in another place. Its speed decreased, but it quickly increased again. After reaching the maximum speed, it flashed again and entered the space-time tunnel again. Space-time flicker. This was the magical ability of the Flash Space Divine Boat, which was the origin of its name. After accelerating to the maximum speed, it would activate the space-time flicker ability and travel through space-time in an instant. Each time it traveled a long distance, it would undoubtedly save a lot of time. Of course, every time it activated the space-time flicker ability, the Flash Space Divine Boat would consume a lot of energy. Although the Divine Boat itself had the ability to absorb energy from the chaotic void when it was first built, it could not fully recover. It still needed to consume other things to convert them into energy. Brother Chu, it will take a year from departure to the primordial spirit battlefield, Qin Shiriwa said. I plan to cultivate in seclusion for a year to increase my strength as much as possible so that I won't die in the primordial spirit battlefield. I want to train as well, Chu Mu said. Yes, Brother Chu. After we reach the Essence Soul battlefield, not only do we have to be careful of the Celestials, we also have to be careful of others, said Qin Shiriwa. She turned and left, returning to her cultivation chamber to cultivate in seclusion. Going to the primordial spirit battlefield was not a child's play, nor was it an outing. It was a life and death battle. Therefore, no one dared to waste this year's time. After everyone entered the Flash Space Divine Boat, they stayed in the secret cultivation room and cultivated with all their heart, trying their best to increase their cultivation and strength. A year's time was considered very short for a great Emperor Realm expert. There was a limit to how much they could improve, especially when the cultivation environment was relatively ordinary. Seizing every minute, Chu Mu cultivated diligently. He cultivated the truth-seeking technique, swordsmanship, and comprehended and perfected the sword way of the heavens. He discovered that without a good environment or external help, it was too difficult to cultivate by himself. After a year, his cultivation did not improve at all. His comprehension of the sword way of the heavens was also very weak. Other than the 5 elements, wind and thunder, Chu Mu could only form the ice swords of the heavens. The other mysteries were not perfected enough. They were only at a superficial level and were not enough to form the sword way of the heavens. Time flew by as he cultivated in seclusion. After a year, the Flash Space Divine Boat, also stopped. Everyone woke up from their cultivation and left the Flash Space Divine Boat. We've reached the Primordial Spirit Battlefield. Primordial Spirit Battlefield, I'm coming. Celestials, wash your necks and wait for me to kill you, someone shouted. Immediately, it attracted the disdain of some people. Did they really think that the Celestials were like vegetables that could be killed so easily? After Chu-Mu walked out of the Flash Space Divine Boat, he looked ahead and his heart trembled. There was a piece of land in front of him. It seemed to be broken and fixed in the chaotic void. It was boundless, and there seemed to be countless auras surrounding it. It gave people a very fierce feeling. The Primordial Spirit Battlefield was formed by the collision of many broken pieces of land and various strongholds. It stretched for tens of thousands of miles and was very vast. Chaotic starlight rays swept in from all directions and penetrated the Primordial Spirit Battlefield. For cultivators below the Great Emperor Realm, the starlight rays were fatal because their bodies could not withstand it. Only after reaching the Great Emperor Realm and undergoing a transformation of life could they withstand the corrosive damage caused by the starlight rays. "Brother Chu, let's go," Qin Shiwa said as she looked at the figures flying towards the Primordial Spirit Battlefield. "Let's go." Chu-Mu nodded, and the two of them flew down, quickly. "Brother Chu, I plan to go to the Origin City first, and then go out to hunt the Celestials and Star Beasts. What about you?" Qin Shiwa asked as she descended. The Origin City was a city built by the various clans in the Origin Realm on the Primordial Spirit Battlefield. After all, the Primordial Spirit Battlefield had existed for a long time, and there was a need for a corresponding station. In this way, the experts of various clans who came to the Primordial Spirit Battlefield could have a place to recuperate and a place to trade and replenish their energy. There was an Origin City on the Primordial Spirit Battlefield. The Celestials had also built a Divine City. Moreover, in addition to the Origin City and the Divine City, there were corresponding strongholds set up at the border of the territories of both clans. Each stronghold was like a small town, and there were many cultivators there. In addition to killing each other in the Primordial Spirit Battlefield, there was another way to go one step further, and that was to break through the strongholds. Every time a stronghold was broken through, there would be a lot of losses. As for breaking through the city, it was too difficult and almost impossible. This was because it was said that there was a demigod sovereign in charge of the city, and there were many Dominator Realm experts. "I won't go to the Origin City for the time being," Chu-Mu said. "Brother Qin, see you again." "See you again," Qin Shiwa said in a clear voice, and the two of them parted ways. Chu-Mu landed on the ground of the Primordial Spirit Battlefield. There were countless cracks on the ground that looked as if it would shatter at any time, but in reality, the ground was incomparably hard. Chu-Mu lifted his foot and stomped on the ground. Bang! Dust flew into the air, but the ground was not affected in the slightest. One had to know that Chu-Mu was a low-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert. Moreover, he had cultivated all three aspects to the second-step Emperor Realm at the same time. His physique strength was tyrannical. This stomp of his was enough to seriously injure a first-step Emperor Realm expert. However, this kind of strength did not cause any damage to the ground. It was enough to show how hard the ground was. Chu-Mu leaped into the air and flew towards the Primordial Spirit Battlefield at lightning speed. The first level of the World's End near-at-hand physique allowed Huang Xiaolong to fly faster than a low-level, second-step Emperor Realm expert. Chu-Mu's target was naturally the center of the Primordial Spirit Battlefield. That was the border between the God race and the Origin world's various races' territories. It was more chaotic and easier to hunt down God race experts. Other than the God race experts, Huang Xiaolong could also hunt star beasts. Although killing star beasts did not give him any clan points, it was still a good harvest. The so-called star beast was a special kind of beast. This kind of beast basically did not reside in a world's boundary, because the source of their power was the chaotic universe's star rays. Therefore, Star beasts could only exist in places like the Primordial Spirit Battlefield and the Primordial Spirit Battlefield. In the chaotic universe, there were several kinds of second-order life forms. The ones that were clearly recorded were the Yuan race that had disappeared, the God race and Devil race that were still alive and very powerful. Other than that, there were also the Chaos Beasts. To a certain extent, Star Beasts could be considered a branch of the Chaos Beasts. In other words, they possessed a trace of the Chaos Beasts' bloodline. Therefore, they were between the third and second-order life forms. There was no doubt that Star Beasts were powerful, but they had a fatal flaw. They did not possess any intelligence. They only had the instinct to fight and kill. Once they became enemies, they would not rest until they were dead. Chu Mu hurried on. A day later, he was still within the boundary of the origin city. An astonishing roar sounded. That roar was accompanied by a terrifying desire to fight and kill. Hearing it, one's blood would boil or one's hair would stand on end. In front of him, there was a huge beast with two extremely sharp horns on its head. Its body muscles bulged and it was extremely strong. Its surface was covered with scales, and each scale seemed to be flickering with starlight. Its long tail swept horizontally. The end of it was triangular and very sharp. Its scarlet eyes were filled with brutality, and there was only the desire to kill. It would tear apart all living creatures that appeared in front of it. Its mouth was filled with shark-like, sharp teeth that could crush anything. Its entire body was emitting a monstrous, murderous aura. Mixed with the chaotic fluctuations of the starlight rays, it looked like a peerless killing machine. Star beasts were divided into two levels, soldier level and general level. The soldier level was divided into low level, middle level, and high level, which corresponded to the 3 steps of the Great Emperor realm. The aura that the star beast in front of Chu Mu was exuding let Chu Mu know that it was a middle level star beast. Moreover, it was one of the stronger ones. As a life form that surpassed the third order and was only second to the second order. Star beasts had an extremely strong physique. They also possessed astonishing star energy. Their pure desire to fight and kill made their strength extremely terrifying. They were often more powerful than Great Emperor realm experts of the same level. Under normal circumstances, it would take 2 great emperors of the same level to fight against one star beast. Chu Mu was not an ordinary Great Emperor realm expert. He was a peerless Great Emperor realm expert. His strength far exceeded his cultivation. Naturally, he would not be afraid of this seemingly powerful star beast in front of him. With a terrifying roar, the star beast turned into a flash of light and pounced towards Chu Mu. It raised its sharp claws that were condensed with shocking, killing intent. Chapter 2263. A roar filled with killing intent reverberated in his ears. Terrifying killing intent assaulted him, and Chu Mu felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His entire body felt cold. The star beast's sharp claws tore through the air, and a terrifying force that could shatter meteorites and tear heaven and earth apart descended with terrifying killing intent. However, the claws grabbed nothing but air, and only a few scratches were left behind. Chu Mu dodged the star beast's claws. Before he could react, the star beast's sharp horns pierced through him like a peerless divine sword. Subsequently, the star beast's tail also tore through the air, and it was like a peerless divine spear piercing through the void. Finally, the star beast's sharp teeth bit down. In an instant, the star beast launched 4 consecutive attacks. The timing of each attack was perfect, and there were no superfluous movements in each attack. It was purely for the sake of killing the target. It used the most direct and most efficient method to kill the target. Chu Mu had personally experienced the star beast's 4 consecutive attacks, and he was even more aware of the star beast's tyrannical strength. The star beast's powerful physique and astonishing speed, in addition to the most efficient killing technique, could turn the star beast into a killing machine. This kind of technique had already surpassed many cultivators. In some aspects, even Chu Mu admitted that he was inferior. However, Chu Mu still managed to dodge the Star Beast's 4 consecutive attacks by a hair's breadth. After all, his true strength was stronger than this Star Beast. If a third Step Emperor Realm Star Beast launched 4 consecutive attacks, Chu Mu estimated that it would be more difficult for him to dodge. After the 4 consecutive attacks missed, the Star Beast suddenly launched a 5th attack. A ball of light suddenly emerged from the Star Beast's mouth. The ball of light seemed to be made up of countless colors, and it shot out endlessly. Chu Mu immediately felt his hair stand on end. Third stage of the truth-seeking 4 directions, time. The difference of a breath allowed Chu Mu to dodge the starlight shot out by the Star Beast. The starlight rays that were everywhere on the battlefield were extremely harmful to cultivators below the Great Emperor Realm. The starlight rays that the soldier-level Star Beast spat out could erode and kill Great Emperor Realm experts. The incomparably hard ground was bombarded by the starlight spewed out by the Star Beast and instantly split open. It was like a red-hot soldering iron falling on ice and snow, rapidly sinking in. Chu Mu's scalp went numb at the sight. It wasn't just 4 consecutive attacks, but 5 consecutive attacks. Under normal circumstances, cultivators at the same cultivation level as the Star Beast would have a hard time dodging these attacks. The Star Beast's strength was equivalent to a peak 2nd step Great Emperor, which was weaker than Chu Mu. If Chu Mu wanted to kill it, he only needed 1 strike. However, Chu Mu wasn't in a hurry to kill it. This was his first time encountering a Star Beast. His understanding of the Star Beast was very limited. Therefore, he wanted to experience it personally and understand it better. He also wanted to learn the Star Beast's combat skills and improve his own combat strength. Under Chu Mu's sword, the Star Beast unleashed all of its strength to the extreme. It pounced on Chu Mu crazily and displayed its skills to the extreme. Every movement and every movement of its muscles was grasped by Chu Mu in great detail. Since he was already familiar with all of this Star Beast's methods and grasped the technique of using its strength, Chu Mu did not plan to continue fighting with it. Star Beasts could constantly absorb the starlight in the air to replenish their energy consumption. Therefore, in places with starlight, Star Beasts would not know fatigue. With the myriad heaven's golden sword in his hand, Chu Mu casually pierced through the Star Beast. A tyrannical force swept out and destroyed the Star Beast's body. The Star Beast was also a life form of flesh and blood. After being killed by Chu Mu, its blood flowed all over the ground. Its blood was red, but there were spots of bright light mixed in it. It looked like fluorescent powder. It's said that one of the rewards from killing Star Beasts is their crystal. Chu Mu thought. The myriad heaven's golden sword was incomparably sharp. It cut open the Star Beast's body and dug out a crystal from its head. This crystal was in the shape of a rhombus. It was transparent on the outside and contained countless kinds of light inside. Those lights flickered and were extremely beautiful. The Star Beast crystal contained pure star energy, but it was harmless to the human body. This kind of star energy could be absorbed by people to replenish their energy. It could also be used to increase their cultivation. The most important thing was that one could comprehend the great Tao of stars from the energy of the Star Beast crystal. The great Tao of stars was one of the high-end great Taos. It was extremely profound and mysterious. Its might was astonishing. Those who came to the battlefield were usually here to kill gods and devils. They were also here to kill Star Beasts. Although killing Star Beasts wouldn't give them any clan merit points, they could still obtain Star Beast crystals. It was a good choice whether to use it or sell it. Chu Mu sensed a little. This piece of Star Beast crystal had reached intermediate grade 4. The star energy it contained was rather dense and pure. However, he planned to take more and use the Star Beast crystal to comprehend the great Tao of stars. He wanted to perfect the great Tao of stars in his myriad heavens sword Tao and condense the myriad heavens stellar sword. The more myriad heavens swords he condensed, the deeper Chu Mu's comprehension of the myriad heavens Sword Tao would be. This was a process that complemented each other. Similarly, the more myriad heavens swords he condensed, the stronger the myriad heavens sword spirit would be. After collecting the star beast crystal, Chu Mu moved forward again. After another day, Chu Mu arrived at a stronghold at the border of the origin city. It was called the Seventh Stronghold. The Seventh Stronghold was like a town. The people in the town came from various races in the origin world. Most of them were great emperors. There was also a small group of sovereign realm experts who took turns to guard the stronghold. The stronghold was surrounded by a special kind of wood. This kind of wood was called the star ironwood. It was extremely hard. Even a third-step great emperor might not be able to break it. However, other than being hard, the star ironwood didn't have any other uses. It wasn't difficult to find it on the battlefield. Therefore, it was used as a wall. Chu Mu was a human cultivator. Naturally, he could enter the seventh stronghold easily. Along the way, he saw many stalls hawking their wares. The people who set up the stalls were all great emperors. This scene was very interesting. It was like a market for mortals. If he didn't see it with his own eyes, it would be hard to imagine that great emperors with high status in the origin world would actually set up stalls to sell their wares. Of course, the items on the stalls of great emperors weren't ordinary. There was star iron, which could be used to forge swords, other weapons, and secret treasures. There were also star beast crystals, fragments of weapons, and so on. It was very complicated. The common currency for transactions was clan merit points. Clan merit points could be used by all races because they could be exchanged with each other. Chu Mu slowed down his footsteps. As he walked past, he carefully looked at the stalls on both sides to see if there was anything useful for him. What he needed was something that could increase his cultivation speed, or something that could help perfect the All-Heaven Sword Tao, or something that could help condense the All-Heaven Sword. My purpose in coming to the Yuan Spirit Battlefield is to train myself in life and death battles. The ultimate goal of training is to make myself stronger. Chu Mu thought to himself, since that's the case, if there are any suitable treasures, I naturally won't let them go. Unfortunately, Chu Mu walked along and looked at all the stalls. However, he didn't find anything useful. Indeed, star beast crystals were useful. However, he could obtain them by hunting. There was no need to use clan merit points to buy them. As for the metals, it wasn't that Chu Mu didn't need them. It was just that there wasn't enough to satisfy Chu Mu. Walking along the way, Chu Mu soon reached the exit of the seventh foothold and directly headed outside. A low-level second-step Emperor realm entering and leaving didn't attract any attention. This was very normal. Even a third-step Emperor realm expert entering and leaving was a very common thing. Perhaps in many places in the origin world, Emperor realm experts were rarely seen. However, in the Yuan Spirit Battlefield, they were the most numerous group. In this place, only those who had reached the sovereign realm would attract more attention. As for half-god sovereigns, no matter where they went, they would be the center of attention. Of course, under normal circumstances, it was impossible to see half-god sovereigns appearing. Walking out of the foothold's entrance, Huang Xiaolong continued to walk forward. It was the central zone of the Origin City and Divine City. It didn't belong to either Divine City or Origin City. It was also the place with the highest number of star beasts. It was also the place where the god race and the various races of the origin world were the most active. Soon, Chu Mu stepped into the central zone of the Yuan Spirit Battlefield. The baleful qi here was denser than other places, because of the frequent battles and massacres. Chu Mu's speed wasn't slow. He quickly went deep into the central zone. Along the way, he didn't encounter the god race first. Instead, he encountered many humans and other races, such as the Vajra race, the human soldier race, the beastmen race, and so on. There were also some Emperor realm experts from small races. Every one of them carried a killing intent and fiendish aura. It was extremely shocking. Their eyes were cold, and when they looked over, it was as if they were looking at prey. When they passed by, the terrifying killing intent and fiendish aura pervaded the air, causing Chu-Mu to be on high alert. These people were all Emperor Realm experts. Moreover, they were the kind of Emperor Realm experts who had experienced many life and death battles. The application of their strength was no small matter. They weren't easy to deal with. Chu-Mu didn't dare to let his guard down. One had to know that in a place like the Yuan Spirit Battlefield, especially in a place like the Central Zone, all rules and regulations were useless. There was no binding force at all. Perhaps the real enemy was the god race. However, it didn't exclude the possibility of the various races of the origin world killing each other. Everything was as long as there were enough benefits. Since ancient times, there were many examples of relatives and friends plotting against each other and killing each other for the sake of benefits. To put it cruelly, in a place like the Yuan Spirit Battlefield, it was difficult to find someone you could trust other than yourself. Chapter 2264 Divine Lightning Sword Skill. Lightning rumbled, lightning flashed, and streaks of lightning appeared, tearing heaven and earth apart. They descended from the void in an instant, shattering everything in their path. The lightning was like dragons and pythons, domineering and unparalleled. Streaks of lightning contained a shocking amount of spiritual force as they attacked Chu-Mu's spiritual world. Chu-Mu swung his sword light, and the myriad heavens wind sword light stirred up a gust of sword wind. The wind was light and swift, and the sword light pierced through the streaks of lightning, arriving before the God Emperor in an instant. The myriad heavens Emperor's body stiffened as a gust of wind blew past his ear. He didn't know when, but his forehead had been pierced through, and his soul was shattered. This was merely a god race's second-step Emperor Realm expert. His strength was far below Chu-Mu's. Chu-Mu didn't even need to execute the all-heavens sword skill to kill him. After killing the god race Emperor, Chu-Mu's sword flicked, and he took the god race Emperor's spatial ring to check. This god race Emperor's spatial ring contained a lot of treasures. There were more than a dozen star beast crystals, but most of them were low-grade and only 2 were mid-grade. Not only did Chu-Mu put away the spatial ring, but he also put away the god race Emperor's swords. They were useful to him. Hunting god race experts and star beasts, Chu-Mu's low-level third-step Emperor Realm strength was fully displayed. The all-heavens sword's power was astounding. Once he used the all-heavens fire sword and the 7th level of the immemorial sword seal. His strength surpassed the average low-level third-step Emperor Realm expert. He could even put up a fight against a mid-level third-step Emperor Realm expert. If he came across a high-level third-step Emperor Realm expert, Chu-Mu would retreat immediately. He knew that his current strength was insufficient to fight against a high-level third-step Emperor Realm expert. However, with the world's end near at hand, other than a high-level third-step Emperor Realm expert who excelled in speed, no one could catch up to Chu-Mu. After hunting for some time, Chu-Mu returned to the 7th foothold and entered seclusion. This time, I will comprehend the great Tao of stars and condense the celestial sword of stars, Chu-Mu thought to himself. Within the 7th foothold, as long as one paid the corresponding price, one could rent a secret room for seclusion. The price was usually clan merit points. Chu-Mu had tens of thousands of clan merit points. Compared to most great Emperor Realm experts, he had a lot of clan merit points. It was easy for him to rent a secret room for seclusion. Inside the seclusion room, Chu-Mu took out pieces of star beast crystals and started to absorb the energy within. He then started to comprehend the profoundness of the star Tao within. In an instant, countless specks of starlight surrounded Chu-Mu and revolved around him. It was very magnificent and abnormally beautiful, like a miniature version of the starry sky. Chu-Mu was immersed in it, comprehending the various mysteries contained within. The Grand Tao of Star was a top-rate Grand Tao, and it wasn't the slightest bit inferior to the Grand Tao of Space. It obviously surpassed the Grand Taos of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, ice, lightning, light, darkness, and so on and so forth. Thus, the difficulty of comprehending it far surpassed the grand Taos of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and so on and so forth. If it was during normal times, it would be extremely difficult for Chu-Mu to comprehend the great Tao of stars. However, it was much easier now because he had the Star Beast crystal. He could feel it at a close distance. As time passed, the various mysteries of the great Tao of stars appeared bit by bit. Under this kind of direct observation, the effect of comprehending was very obvious. As he comprehended the mysteries of the great way of the stars, Chu-Mu's all heavens sword-way source flickered with bits of starlight. They seemed to appear out of thin air and fused into the source, enriching the mysteries of the stars within the source. Similarly, bits of starlight fused into his body and were absorbed by the all heavens sword. Both of them advanced at the same time. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. Pieces of Star Beast crystals were absorbed by Chu-Mu and turned into countless specks of starlight. Every speck of starlight contained the mysteries of the great Tao of stars. The more he absorbed, the more he could comprehend. This kind of comprehension method was undoubtedly more direct compared to other cultivators. In the outside world, there were still endless battles and massacres. Every day, many experts of the source world died. Every day, many star beasts were hunted down. Similarly, many experts of the god race died every day. Another half a month passed. Chu-Mu absorbed all the star beast crystals. There were over 100 star beast crystals. When the last star beast crystal was absorbed by him, Chu-Mu felt waves of fluctuations coming from his body. Those were the fluctuations of the all-heaven sword. Master, you can condense a new divine sword again. Little Tian's tender voice sounded. Is it the star sword? Chu-Mu asked. Yes. Little Tian's voice was filled with joy. The more all-heaven's sword was condensed, the more its spirituality would increase and become more complete. When it reached a certain level, it could even manifest. Manifesting in the outside world was one of its wishes. Then let's condense, Chu-Mu said. Little Tian didn't reply. Instead, it mobilized the power of the all-heaven sword and began to condense a new sword. Starlight surged. The surface of Chu-Mu's body flickered continuously, making him look like a person formed by the power of the stars. Shortly after, countless starlight gathered towards his arm, wrapping around Chu-Mu's entire palm. Soon after, it shot out and pierced through the void. In an instant, it condensed and solidified into a long sword. The body of the sword didn't have a specific color. Instead, it was filled with starlight, flickering little by little. It was very beautiful, making one unable to put it down. This was the all-heavens sword of stars. The all-heavens sword of stars contained the power of the great Tao of stars. Of course, it was still very weak at the moment. Chu-Mu's all-heavens sword Tao used the sword Tao as the core and integrated the mysteries of countless Taos. When one comprehended a Tao, they could successfully condense the corresponding sword. In other words, Chu-Mu's comprehension of the great Taos of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, star, and so on had already reached the entry level. However, his comprehension of the great Tao of fire was much deeper because the all-heavens sword of stars had reached the great emperor level. However, the great Tao of stars was more mysterious and powerful than the great Taos of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, and so on. Therefore, the all-heavens sword of stars' power would be stronger than them at the same level. Since I've already condensed the all-heavens sword of stars, then I'll go out again to hunt the divine race and star beasts, Chu-Mu thought. The effect of using star beast crystals to comprehend the great Tao of stars was very obvious. He had to obtain more. In addition, he could also absorb the power of star beast crystals to cultivate the truth-seeking technique and increase his cultivation. In addition, if he could obtain more divine race swords, not only could he use them to cultivate the immemorial sword seal, but he could also break down many of the divine race swords and extract the materials within to refine and absorb. The divine race's swords were integrated with the corresponding power of the great Tao. For example, some of the divine race cultivated the divine thunder sword technique. Then, their swords would contain the power of thunder. This was because when the sword was first forged, the metal that contained the power of the great Tao of thunder had to be refined and integrated into the sword. This was also one of the reasons why Chu-Mu chose to come to the primordial spirit battlefield and not the primordial demon battlefield. When he walked out of the 7th foothold again, he still did not attract much attention. However, just as Chu-Mu was about to step out of the gate of the 7th foothold, a figure walked towards him. It was a human. His blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. His face was cold. His facial features were firm, and his eyes were filled with indifference towards life. His body was surrounded by traces of blood-red, baleful qi. That baleful qi was as sharp as a sword. As it spun, it sliced through the void. Along with the terrifying murderous qi, there was also the qi of the peak of the 3rd step of the great emperor realm. Blood Sword Emperor Dong Shui. His killing intent is so scary. I wonder how many god race beings and star beasts he has killed this time around. When Chu-Mu passed by this person, his entire body unconsciously trembled. That fiendish aura was icy cold, causing him to unconsciously tremble. This trembling had the trembling of facing an extremely powerful enemy, as well as the excitement of facing a powerful enemy. However, Chu-Mu knew very well that with his current strength, he was no match for this person. Perhaps he would not even be able to withstand a single strike from this person. However, he remembered this person's name. Blood Sword Emperor Dong Shui. Chu-Mu did not know that this Blood Sword Emperor Dong Shui was famous. He was one of the top experts on the primordial spirit battlefield list. After leaving the 7th foothold, Chu-Mu entered the center of the battlefield. Not long after, he encountered a star beast. This star beast's strength was comparable to a low-level 3rd step Great Emperor Realm star beast. Its strength was much stronger than an ordinary low-level 3rd step Great Emperor Realm star beast. Chu-Mu grasped the void with his right hand, and the myriad heaven stars sword appeared in his hand. This was the newly formed myriad heaven stars sword. Chu-Mu wanted to test its power. After experiencing many battles, Chu-Mu was quite familiar with the star beast's fighting style. Facing this powerful low-level 3rd step Great Emperor Realm star beast, he did not dare to relax. The star beast's killing techniques were exquisite and unparalleled. Chu-Mu was learning, absorbing the essence of the star beast and integrating it into his own body. The myriad heaven stars sword slashed out and executed the myriad heavens sword style. This sword was Sword 3, the perfect combination of strength and speed. With the myriad heaven stars sword, this sword's power was even more tyrannical. This was because the myriad heaven stars sword contained a trace of the great Tao of stars, which strengthened the power of Sword 3. However, this star beast's strength was extraordinary. Chu-Mu's Sword 3 could not hit it. However, this was also a form of tempering. Only such a powerful opponent could bring about better tempering for him. The 2nd and 3rd stages of the 4 directions truth-seeking steps were executed alternately. Chu-Mu's left hand also condensed the myriad heavens golden sword, which coordinated with the myriad heavens star sword in his right hand. The myriad heavens sword style, Sword 1 to Sword 9, were executed alternately under the 2 swords. Wounds were left on the star beast's body, but they were not fatal. This was because the star beast's physique was very strong, and its defense was shocking. As Chu-Mu fought, he slowly controlled the rhythm of the battle. He continued to train himself. His footwork, movement, and sword skills were combined. He integrated the star beast's killing techniques bit by bit, making his movements simpler and simpler. He used the least amount of strength to achieve the greatest goal. Here's my chance. Suddenly, a sharp light flickered in Chu Mu's eyes. In an instant, it was as if there was a surge of tyrannical power. Chapter 2265. The golden swords in Huang Xiaolong's left hand were brimming with metal origin energy. Golden light shone from the swords, and the metal Grand Tao's energy, drifting between heaven and earth, was drawn towards the golden swords. 10th sword, metal sword annihilation. Chu Mu let out a low roar. The myriad heaven's golden swords carried a shocking sharpness as they instantly pierced out. This sword was silent, yet it pierced through the void towards the star beast. That sword contained the ultimate combination of power and speed, as well as the technique of dealing with all changes by remaining unchanged. It also contained shocking murderous aura and murderous intent. That was the 9th sword. However, the 10th sword was built on the foundation of the 9th sword, incorporating the power of the Great Path. The golden swords of the heavens themselves carried the power of the origin of metal. With the Shen clan's method of drawing in the power of the Great Path of heaven and earth, the power of the Great Path of metal was drawn into the golden swords of the heavens. Combining with Sword 9, it became Sword 10. However, the 10th sword was different from the previous 9 swords because there was more than one sword in the 10th sword. Every myriad heaven's sword could execute the 10th sword, metal sword annihilation, fire sword annihilation, and so on. Different 10th swords possessed different powers. The metal sword annihilation was incomparably sharp, capable of piercing through everything. This star beast's physique was extremely tough, and there was a faint layer of starlight covering its body like an armor. Chu Mu's previous attacks barely managed to break through the star beast's second layer of defense, injuring its body, but it wasn't able to inflict any serious injuries. On top of that, the star beast's self-healing ability was astounding. The golden sword annihilation slashed out, turning into a golden sword light that was as thick as a chopstick and extremely sharp. It was fast, accurate, ruthless, and incomparably sharp. There was no way to dodge it. In an instant, it broke through the first layer of defense of the star beast. Then, it broke through the second layer of defense. Like a sharp knife cutting through tofu, it instantly pierced through the star beast's head. Killed in one strike, a low-level 3rd step Emperor Realm Star Beast was strong enough to fight against 2 or 3 human low-level 3rd step Emperor Realm Cultivators, but it couldn't even withstand one strike from Chu Mu. It was clear how terrifying this sword's power was. In fact, this was Chu Mu's first time executing the 10th sword in battle. Currently, his mastery of the 10th sword was very limited, and he only knew the 5 swords of metal: wood, water, fire, and earth. After killing the star beast, Chu Mu dug out the star beast crystal and put away the myriad heaven's sword. He held the myriad heaven's sword in his left hand and the heaven's water heaven's sword in his right hand. He flew into the air, searching for the god race and star beasts. No matter if it was the battle with the god race or the star beasts, they had to do their best. They were all battles that involved life and death. If they were not careful, they could die. Even if they were not weak, they had to be careful when facing opponents who were weaker than them. Otherwise, they might be killed. Most of the time in a battle, it wasn't just strength that determined victory or defeat. Life and death were also related to the surrounding environment. In short, it was the right time, the right place, and the right people. Chu Mu's opponent was a mid-level 3rd step Emperor Realm God Race expert, and he used the Divine Flame sword art. Every sword attack contained spiritual force, and at the same time, it would draw the power of the Grand Tao of fire between heaven and earth, condensing into clusters of flames. Terrifying heat spread in all directions, as if it wanted to burn Chu Mu to ashes. Sword light flashed between Chu Mu's eyebrows, and there were a total of 8 sword lights. That was the symbol of the immemorial sword seal's 8th layer. The immemorial sword seal's 8th layer directly increased Chu Mu's sharpness by 80%, making his 2 swords sharper and more powerful. 10th sword, murderous water sword. The azure sword light was vast and mighty, like an ocean flowing across the horizon, like a heavenly river flowing in reverse, unhindered through the ages. The heavens water sword's water origin aura merged with the grand Tao of water between heaven and earth, becoming more profound and powerful. It rushed over and instantly extinguished the divine flame sword art's flames. 10th sword, murderous golden sword. The golden sword light was extremely condensed, and it was only as thick as a chopstick. In an instant, it pierced through the sky and attacked the god race expert. The power contained in these two swords instantly terrified the god race emperor realm god race expert. He couldn't understand. The person in front of him was obviously from the human race, but how could he be like the god race expert, infusing spiritual force into his attacks? Yes, there were some human race experts who studied the god race's secret techniques, and they had grasped similar methods, but there were very few of them, and they were different. After all, when a god race expert reached the emperor realm, they would condense their divine soul, and their spiritual force would undergo a qualitative change, becoming powerful and pure spiritual force. The human race's emperor realm was different. They used the power of the soul. Therefore, the human race's emperor realm experts who studied the god race's secret techniques also used soul force and not spiritual force to attack. The human in front of him clearly had pure spiritual force, and it even gave him a feeling that it was purer than the god race's spiritual force of the same cultivation level. The second point was that the other party could actually draw on the grand Tao of fire between heaven and earth, just like the god race's sword Tao. He almost thought that this person was a god race expert wearing the skin of a human. Under the 7th level of the immemorial sword seal, the truth seeker technique was activated to the extreme, and the great truth wheel appeared behind him, rotating slowly, releasing a terrifying aura. Chu Mu executed the 10th sword of all heavens sword style to the extreme, and the swords in his hands alternated continuously. 10th sword, fire sword kill. 10th sword, wood sword kill. 10th sword, earth sword kill. Different 10th swords contained different powers, and they were executed alternately, giving the god race emperor a feeling that it was impossible to guard against. If not for the fact that his strength was higher, he would have been defeated and killed by Chu Mu. Even so, the god race emperor couldn't do anything to Chu Mu. The absolute difference between the two of them wasn't big, and Chu Mu's sword skills were more exquisite, which was an advantage. Moreover, Chu Mu's killing techniques were better than his, which was another advantage. Under such circumstances, it was difficult to determine the winner. Suddenly, the all-heaven sword in Chu Mu's right hand changed again and became the all-heavens wind sword. 10th sword, wind sword kill. The cyan sword light was like the wind, and it was unbelievably fast. It silently cut through the void. This sword was completely out of the god race emperor's expectations. Looking at the sword slashing towards his neck, his face changed drastically, and his instincts that were tempered by life and death situations drove him to dodge to the side. He managed to avoid his vitals, but he couldn't completely dodge. His right arm that was holding the sword was cut off by the wind sword kill. The moment his arm was cut off, the god race emperor made a prompt decision. He didn't care about the consumption of his strength, and he exploded with his fastest speed, retreating in an instant. Chu Mu kept the god race emperor's severed arm into his spatial ring, and executed the 3rd level of the world's end near-at-hand body. In a breath's time difference, he chased after the god race emperor, and his 2 swords pierced through the void. Even though the god race emperor's severed arm was injured, he was still a god race emperor, and he was a mid-level 3rd step emperor realm expert. When he focused on escaping, Chu Mu couldn't catch up to him. In the end, he could only watch as the god race emperor ran away. However, Chu Mu felt that it wasn't bad for him to be able to defeat a mid-level 3rd step emperor realm expert with the help of the immemorial sword seal's 8th level amplification. It was even better than what he had expected. As he cultivated, comprehended, and battled, his control over the All-Heavens sword would deepen, and his understanding of the All-Heavens sword Tao would deepen. The 10th sword would also be perfected. The so-called 10th sword was based on the foundation of the 9th sword. It stimulated the corresponding All-Heavens sword's power, and drew the power of the Grand Tao from heaven and earth to condense it into a single sword. It was unparalleled in power. Even though Huang Xiaolong failed to kill the God Race Emperor, he had severed his right arm, and it was a very important right arm. The All-Heavens sword and spatial ring were in the severed arm. However, the God Race Emperor was still alive, and the mark on the spatial ring was still there. Chu Mu planned to slowly break the mark after returning to the stronghold. Yes, Chu Mu decided to return to the 7th stronghold to rest and reorganize himself. In a battle between life and death, there was a limit to tension and relaxation. If he blindly pursued a battle of life and death, it was very likely that he would overstep his limits and bring unnecessary harm to himself. On the way back to the 7th stronghold, Chu Mu didn't encounter any danger. Every enemy he encountered died under his sword, and without exception, they became his spoils of war. As soon as he entered the 7th stronghold, Chu Mu noticed that there were fewer people than usual. Obviously, the streets were much more sparse. Did something happen? Chu Mu asked inwardly. It didn't take long for Chu Mu to find out that something had happened, and it was directly related to the origin city. It turned out that an auction was about to be held in the origin city, and it attracted many experts to participate. The purpose of coming to the Yuan spirit battlefield was to sharpen oneself. So in order to better sharpen oneself, one would naturally use all kinds of means. The auction would either not be held, or once it was held, there would definitely be some good stuff. If one could bid for it, it would definitely be of great use to them. Moreover, even if one couldn't bid for some treasures, it would be good to experience it, because the auction would often attract many experts, and those famous experts who were rarely seen might appear. Auction. Chu Mu pondered for a moment, and decided to go to the origin city to participate. Perhaps he might gain something. Since he had decided to participate in the auction, Chu Mu didn't go into seclusion for the time being, because the auction was about to begin. He quickly left the 7th stronghold, took out the matchless flying boat, and flew towards the origin city at the fastest speed. The Yuan spirit battlefield wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. However, with the speed of a 3rd step great sovereign, he could still cover half of the distance in 2 days. The 7th stronghold was a little far from the origin city, but Chu Mu used the matchless flying boat. The speed of a minor sovereign was many times faster than a 3rd step great sovereign, and it wouldn't take half a day to reach the origin city. Since Chu Mu came to the Yuan spirit battlefield, he rushed to the 7th stronghold and entered the center of the battlefield again. He had never been to the origin city, and when he saw the origin city at this time, he unconsciously felt a sense of shock. Majestic and vigorous, the vicissitudes of time, an indescribable aura was entrenched, constantly striking his heart and bringing shock. Chapter 2266. When the origin city was born, it was just a small and dilapidated village. It was just a place for a group of experts to rest and recuperate. After all, in the original Yuan spirit battlefield, most of the beasts were star beasts, and the origin city was their territory. As more and more experts arrived, the origin city gradually expanded and developed until it became the majestic city it was today. Putting away the peerless ship, Chu Mu stepped into the origin city. There were no guards at the entrance of the origin city. In fact, the origin city didn't even have a master. The half-god sovereign that was secretly overseeing the city wouldn't appear unless the origin city was facing a crisis of destruction. Although there was no city lord, there was a rule in the origin city. No one was allowed to fight or kill within the origin city. Whoever violated this rule would be ostracized by the majority of the people. In the future, it would be difficult to move an inch after entering the origin city. This rule had been verified many times, and it might even anger some experts, resulting in death. As for outside the origin city, they could fight however they wanted and no one would care. Chu Mu's cultivation was at the second step Emperor Realm. In a place like the origin city, there were many second step Emperor Realm experts, and there were also many third step Emperor Realm experts. Brother Chu. A familiar, clear voice sounded, and Chu Mu knew who it was without looking back. Brother Qin. We meet again. How's your harvest in these few months? Qin Shiyue asked with a smile. A little. Chu Mu said. My harvest is not big either. I thought my strength was not bad, but it's still not enough. Qin Shiyue smiled bitterly. He was a high-level second-step Emperor Realm expert, but his strength was much stronger than ordinary second-step Emperor Realm experts. However, in a place like the Yuan Spirit Battlefield, he was nothing, because here there were at least first-step Emperor Realm experts, and the enemies were also Emperor Realm experts. Keep your life, improve your strength, and your harvest will slowly increase. Chu Mu said, I heard that many famous experts on a list will come to this auction. I wonder if I can meet them. Qin Shiyue said. On the list? Chu Mu didn't know much about this. There are two lists on both the Primordial Spirit Battlefield and the Primordial Demon Battlefield. They are called the Heavenly Dipper List and the Earthly Carnage List. Only sovereigns can be listed on the Heavenly Dipper List. There are a total of 100 names, and only those extremely powerful sovereigns are qualified to be listed. Qin Shiyue's understanding of the Yuan Spirit Battlefield far exceeded Chu Mu's. The Earth Carnage Proclamation corresponds to the Great Emperor Realm. Similarly, there are only 100 spots. Every expert on the Earth Carnage Proclamation is an expert at the limit of the third step Great Emperor Realm. Their strength is extremely terrifying. Chu Mu listened very seriously. When he heard the introduction of the Earth Carnage Proclamation, his heart involuntarily stirred. A figure flashed across his mind, and he immediately asked, Brother Qin, have you heard of the Blood Sword Emperor Dong Shui? Blood Sword Darch Dong Shui, Qin Shiyue exclaimed. Has Brother Chu seen him before? I saw him once at the 7th foothold, Chu Mu said. Blood Sword Darch Dong Shui, an expert at the limit of the third step Great Emperor Realm. He once fought against 5 limit of the third step Great Emperor Realm experts from the god race alone with 1 sword. In the end, he killed 3 and injured 2. Qin Shiyue exclaimed. Chu Mu was extremely shocked when he heard that. The god race was naturally stronger than the human race. This Blood Sword Darch Dong Shui could fight against 5 experts from the god race alone with 1 sword. He could even kill 3 and injure 2. His strength was indeed extremely shocking. On the Earth Carnage Proclamation, the Blood Sword Darch is ranked 18th. 18th, Chu Mu muttered softly. With such strength, he was actually only ranked 18th on the Earth Carnage Proclamation. In that case, wouldn't the 17 people who were ranked in front of him be even stronger? Chu Mu couldn't help but have a battle intent in his heart. One day he would also compete with the experts on the Earth Carnage Proclamation. At this moment, there was a commotion ahead that attracted the attention of many people. Brother Chu, look. Qin Shiyue hurriedly said to Chu Mu, It's the Ghost Axe Great Emperor from the Bin race. He is ranked 30th on the Earth Carnage Proclamation. And the Broken Mountain Great Emperor from the Vajra race. He is ranked 50th on the Earth Carnage Proclamation. The Tiger King Great Emperor from the Beast Men race. He is ranked 26th on the Earth Carnage Proclamation. Under everyone's gaze, the Great Emperor Realm experts on the Earth Carnage Proclamation appeared one after another. After that, they entered the auction venue. Regardless of whether it was the Heaven Dipper Proclamation or the Earth Carnage Proclamation, the rankings weren't differentiated by race. To put it simply, any cultivator from the source world was qualified to be ranked on it. It was a kind of honor, a symbol of strength, and a representation of one's status. As long as there were cultivators with aspirations, they would all head towards the dual proclamation. However, there were extremely few who could truly be ranked on it. That's the exploding Yuan Spirit Emperor from the ancient spirit race. He is ranked 9th on the Earth Carnage Proclamation. Chu Mu looked over and saw an ancient spirit race's limit 3rd step Great Emperor expert walking over in large strides. His gait was majestic and imposing. There was a kind of domineering majesty that suppressed the earth. Everywhere he passed, it was as if the heaven and earth Yuan Qi accompanied him. The ancient spirit race originally inherited a trace of the Yuan race's talent. They were born with an incomparable affinity towards the heaven and earth Yuan Qi. Moreover, they could cultivate domineering and tyrannical Yuan Qi. Their strength was astonishing. Following the appearance of the Earth Carnage Proclamation's 9th ranked exploding Yuan Spirit Emperor, very soon, the 8th ranked Saber Mountain Great Emperor also appeared. He was from the human race. Following that, the 7th and 6th ranked Terrifying Mountain Great Emperor and Myriad Beast Great Emperor also appeared. They were from the Vajra race and the Beastmen race, respectively. Subsequently, Chu Mu and Qin Shiriwa also walked into the auction venue. Although it could accommodate many people, the auction venue's layout was not casual. Instead, it had a simple feeling with some solemnity and desolation. In this place, Chu Mu was just a very ordinary member. Therefore, he could only stay in the auction venue's main hall like the other great emperor experts. As for those sovereign realm experts and famous experts on the Earth Carnage Proclamation, as well as some experts with extraordinary status, they could enter the side rooms. The treatment was much better. Whether he stayed in the main hall or the side rooms, Chu Mu did not care. The important thing was that this auction had to have treasures that were useful to him. At a glance, there were at least more than 10,000 great emperor experts in this auction hall. Moreover, there were still people coming in continuously. Approximately 2 hours later, the number of great emperor experts in the main hall had exceeded 30,000. However, the auction venue was closed because the auction was about to begin. Perhaps there were still many great emperor experts who had not entered. However, the auction venue could not continue to wait. The stipulated time was up. Very soon, the crowd quietened down. The auction venue was extremely quiet. Not long later, a graceful figure walked out from the auction stage at the front. She was enchanting, and the moment she appeared, she attracted the attention of the tens of thousands of great emperors in the main hall. No matter where it was, as long as there was a distinction between male and female, a beautiful woman would always attract attention. Greetings, everyone. I am the auctioneer of this auction, Muing. Everyone has come here either to broaden their horizons, increase their experience, or to obtain treasures. I won't say much, but I will first present the first treasure. With a clap of her hands, someone immediately presented the treasure. The first auction item would usually be a good start. Therefore, it was not ordinary. It was a ring that was engraved with runes. However, it was very thin and its edges were very sharp. This is a secret treasure called the 9 Heavens, 10 Earths Space Slashing Ring. It is of the great emperor level. It is extremely sharp and contains the profoundness of space. When its power is fully activated, it can easily tear the space apart. Its power is shocking. The auctioneer Mu Ying's voice was as smooth as pearls and jade. It was very pleasant to the ears. The starting price of the 9 Heavens, 10 Earths Space Slashing Ring is 1,000 clan points. Each bid must be at least 10 points higher. The auction begins. As the mallet fell, her voice reverberated throughout the entire hall. A great emperor-level offensive secret treasure that contained the profoundness of space was extremely valuable. In the ancient sword city, 1,000 clan points were far from enough. However, this was an auction, and it was the first item to be auctioned. Therefore, the starting price was relatively low. However, such a secret treasure would be sold for a high price in the end. 1,100. Someone immediately made a bid. 1,500. I want this treasure. A person increased the price by 400 clan points in one go. He wanted to intimidate the others. How can a mere 1,500 afford such a secret treasure? I will bid 2,000. 3,000. The price instantly soared by 1,000 points. However, such a price was still not the true value of the 9 heavens, 10 earths space slashing ring. So far, only the great emperors in the main hall had made a bid. The great emperors in the side rooms had not made any moves. If Chu Mu was not a sword cultivator, he would be interested in such a treasure. Unfortunately, he was a sword cultivator and had nothing other than his sword. Obtaining such a secret treasure might allow him to have more means in a short period of time and increase his strength. However, it would not be a good thing in the long run. It would distract him and affect the progress of his sword Dao. Therefore, no matter how good the treasure was, Chu Mu would not want it. The competition for the 9 heavens, 10 earths space slashing ring was getting more and more intense. Soon, the price soared to 5,000 clan points. This was a price that many great emperors could not afford. However, the great emperors in the primordial spirit battlefield usually had more clan points and were considered relatively wealthy. 5,500. This voice came from one of the side rooms. It meant that the person in the side room could no longer hold back and was about to make a bid. 6,000. The price rose again. 8,000. Peng Chongkong want this treasure. A domineering voice resounded throughout the hall. Whether it was the sudden increase of 2,000 clan points or the name Peng Chongkong, everyone was shocked. Brother Chu, Peng Chongkong's master, is the little sovereign realm expert, the sky-splitting sovereign. He is a peak second step great emperor and mainly cultivates the space grand Dao. It is said that he once defeated a third step great emperor from the gods' race. Qin Shiriwa whispered to Chu Mu. He is considered to be one of the characters who will definitely be listed on the Earth Carnage list in the future. Some cultivators, because of their outstanding combat strength, were often able to challenge those of a higher realm. Therefore, they were given more recognition, especially those who could challenge those of a higher realm.